Evening. I'll call this October 10th, 2023 Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting to order. We have 6 regular members and our alternate is Commissioner Collins.
First up would be Peter, yep.
So we'll go to meeting minutes. May I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Approved from Commissioner Francis. Second from someone.
I'll second.
Thank you. Harrison seconds. Commissioner Francis.
Look fine.
Fine, okay.
Thank you, look good.
Okay. Any other?
Abstain, so it's not present.
Okay. Any comments, questions from the commission? Put this to a vote. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
And this Steve, aye.
Okay, yeah, 6 yeses and then Commissioner Brayman abstains. Moving on, we have 528 Black Rock Turnpike request of El Camarado for 50% of a $65,910 bond pertaining to site improvements in the residence C zone. One,
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this site is at the corner of Black Rock Turnpike and Castle Avenue. It was approved for 23 unit 8-30 residential building on September the 29th of 2020. Bonded improvements include the required site drainage and curbing and sidewalks. The engineering department has reported that 50% of those improvements have been completed and therefore we recommend a 50% reduction in the bond obligation at this time. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. May I have a motion? Commissioner Francis.
Move to approve.
Move to approve, Commissioner Francis. Seconding, Commissioner Brayman. Commissioner Francis.
Gotten the approval of an agency. So I see no problem with it.
Commissioner Brayman.
I agree with Commissioner Francis.
Any other comments or questions to the commission? Straightforward with the email from hearing. To vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
6 hands and an aye, so it passes unanimously. New applications for recommendation to public hearing. 1 Black Rock Turnpike, application of Post Road Residential for special permit, coastal site plan and transit-oriented development park designation pertaining to a mixed-use commercial residential development in the design industrial district and Commerce Drive Design District. Mr. Nguyen.
Yeah, I don't have much here, Mr. Chairman, that you reviewed a pre-application for this some months ago. There was also an application that was in advance of this application to modify some of the regulations. It was recently done. This is now the application for the actual development. It requires a public hearing, which will be scheduled at a subsequent date.
Thank you. May I have a motion? Commissioner Brayman,
Move to public hearing.
second. Commissioner Harrison. Brayman,
A public hearing is required for the special permit application.
Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, ditto.
Any other comments or questions from the commission or can we put this to vote? Favor, please say aye or raise your hand. See 6 hands and an aye, so passed unanimously. Moving on to old business. 2318 Mill Plain Road, re-subdivision application of Sandollar Development LLC for 10 lots in an A zone.
Okay.
What?
Chairman, the subject site is 3.72 acres in size, located at the intersection of Mill Plain Road and Stilson Road in a Residence A zone. The existing dwelling at 2318 Mill Plain Road is proposed to be maintained and 9 new additional lots are proposed. The A zone minimum lot size is 9,375 square feet, and the lots range in size from 11,332 square feet to 21,123. All minimum shape and frontage dimensions are satisfied. 2 of the new lots will have frontage and access on Mill Plain Road, and the remaining 7 lots will be accessed via a new proposed dead-end road off Stilson. Concrete curbs, sidewalks, and driveway aprons are required and shown for the new road, as well as for Stilson Road and the Mill Plain Road frontages. Street trees are also required and shown for the new road and existing street frontages. The Conservation Department reports that there are no inland wetlands or watercourses on site, and therefore no application to the Wetlands Agency is required. Hearing testimony reported that sanitary sewer flow monitoring had been done, which demonstrates there's adequate sewer capacity for the anticipated additional flows. The Engineering Department makes 3 recommendations in their review. One is that the painted stop bar for the new road intersection be moved outside of the Stilson Road right-of-way. 2, that the sidewalk on the new road be shifted so that the back edge of the sidewalk is coincident with the property line to create a grass strip between the curb and the sidewalk. And 3, there's a recommendation to establish a clear sight line easement restricting plantings for the new road intersection. Traffic report established 85th percentile speeds for the sightline analyses. For the new road intersection, the eastbound 85th percentile speed is 28 miles per hour, requiring a 309-foot intersection sight distance to the left, and 310 feet is provided, which is the entire distance from the new road to that intersection of Mill Plain. That's the length of that separation. The westbound 85th percentile speed is 33 miles per hour, requiring a 365 feet of intersection sight distance, and 390 feet is provided. The Mill Plain, for the 2 new driveways, were reviewed using stopping sight distance with an 85th percentile speed of 37 miles per hour. That stopping sight distance required is 275 feet, and the available distance is 435 southbound and 490 northbound. Engineering Department reports that the site distance reported are adequate. Traffic report makes some additional safety recommendations for your consideration. One is that advanced curve warning signage is recommended for the curve on Stilson Road in both directions. That would require police commission approval. Recommending tree trimming and brush clearing at the curve, and also the plan shows them removing or trimming the trees on the southerly side of Stilson and removing an existing evergreen tree at that southeast corner of the Stilson Mill Plain intersection to improve the line of sight. There are 2 other matters that received the bulk of the attention during the hearing. That is the open space fee and the inclusionary zoning provision. With regard to open space or the fee in lieu thereof, this commission had preliminarily recommended an open space fee. As was suggested at the hearing, an updated valuation of the property was sought from the tax assessor, consistent with this commission's past review of subdivision open space. That updated valuation, and I provided that to you in the agenda email. That updated valuation is $1,226,818, which is a 32.5% increase from the previously reported figure, $92,590. Should the commission vote to accept an open space fee, it would be recommended that fee would be $122,682. In addition to that, the applicant has also provided a non-disturbance area which encumbers portions of lots 2, 3, 4, and 5, restricting disturbance along the upper reaches of the hillside on the northeasterly portion of the site. The boundary of that area, they agreed to be demarcated in the field and referenced by deed to remain in a natural state. The applicant estimated that area of non-disturbance is approximately 19,000 square feet, which exceeds the 10% area of the overall subdivision. With regard to exclusionary zoning, section 2.7 of the subdivision regulation states that each plan of a subdivision or re-subdivision or tract or parcels of land that involve development and or dwelling units shall include provisions to set aside not less than 10% of said units as below market rate units. Section further states that in determining the total number of the units in any subdivision, the commission may consider not only the tract or tracts of land to be immediately subdivided, excuse me, but also any other adjacent land or tracts owned or controlled or under agreement to buy by the subdivider. The Housing Authority presented and asserted that the 10-lot, the proposal for 10 lots meets the threshold despite the fact the applicant is preserving the existing homestead. Additionally, since the Ross family has subdivided other parcels in the past, those prior subdivisions should be considered in the calculation of the number of lots in the subdivision. The applicant asserts that the plain language of section 2.7 includes the development of 10 or more dwelling units. The application is for the development of 9 dwelling units. The applicant also provided the 2015 background memo from the Affordable Housing Committee that accompanied their application to amend the regulations that establish this set-aside requirement to begin with. There were 2 proposed regulation amendments at that time. One was for section 25.7 of the zoning regulations and the other 2.7 of the subdivision regulations that we're talking about. In that memo states, quote, "The proposed changes would require that any development project that would result in a net increase of 10 or more residential dwelling units set aside not less than 10% of those units as below market rate housing." The applicant asserts that the regulation language coupled with the memo confirming the regulation intent supports the argument that below market rate housing is not required and there's a net increase of 10 dwelling units. With regard to the second element for consideration of adjacent parcels, the applicant further argued that there are no adjacent parcels that are owned or controlled or under agreement to buy by either Sophia Catherine Ross or Sandollar, or the applicants here. Therefore, in their view, this portion of the regulation does not apply. Nor was there any support for a look back in time provision. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Went. I have a motion on the item. Before I ask, Commissioner Brayman, are you up to speed on this?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Sorry. May I have a motion on the item? Commissioner Braun.
I move to table this item so we can get 2 pieces of information before we render a decision. One from the town attorney with an interpretation of the inclusionary zoning section, and one from the tax assessor to explain exactly what his appraisal consists of, because all I got was an email and I have questions about whether or not that can satisfy our mandatory regulation, which is that we have the town and the applicant both agree on an appraiser to determine fair market value. I think we need that information before we render a decision.
Is there a second? Mayor Collins. Commissioner Braun, anything?
Yeah, so I've looked at some things, and I think we got an email today from someone on the tax assessor's office or Board of Assessment Appeals. But it's obviously after the hearing closed, but I have questions. First on the inclusionary zoning, I read the regulation a few times and I also, paid attention last time we were talking about this a month ago. And while I agree that the 2 lots up Stilson Road were already conveyed out before this application was filed, so they would not be used to add to the total number of lots in this subdivision. However, I believe the farmhouse arguably should be included, and once it is included, then there's a requirement to have one lot be affordable. So there's 2 bases where I believe the farmhouse could be included. And one is whether it is part of the development, meaning it will be remodeled. The plans actually call it a 10-lot re-subdivision. It doesn't call it a 9-lot re-subdivision. So the plans themselves acknowledge that this is a 10-lot subdivision. It's up to interpretation whether a remodeling of a house that's on a plan being called a 10-lot subdivision should be included to add up to the 10 lots. But if you look at the actual regulation, and I printed it out, but I can't find it now. The regulation kind of has similar language to what's in the open space regulations. They're both intended to add to our inventory of whether it's affordable housing or whether it's open space. So they give us the flexibility to consider adjacent properties. So even if that farmhouse is not considered a development property, it could be considered an adjacent property. In other words, if it's not part of the 9-lot subdivision, it's adjacent to it and it's owned by the same people. So in that regard, I think in either of those interpretations, that farmhouse could be considered and arguably should be considered as part of this development, which would then require one lot being dedicated as affordable housing. The other issue is open space. And I'm not sure, I do not believe we're doing this the right way. Maybe the town attorney can weigh in on that also, but when the word shall appears in a regulation, that makes it mandatory. And it says we shall, agree on an appraiser. So whether the tax assessor is an appraiser or not, I don't know. But what I saw was not what I would consider an appraisal, someone who does real estate law. Usually it's a 50-page document. He said he looked at comparables. I'd like him to come here and explain exactly how he came up with that. And also, the number he came up with is the same number that's in the field card that I got from Vision Appraisal. But this was done in 2020. So how can this be a fair market value today if it's using a figure that's on a field card that doesn't change once the town does the appraisal every 5 years? We don't update the value, right? Until we do another appraisal. So to me, even if they corrected or fixed the number from 925,000 to 1.2 million, that does not reflect fair market value. That reflects maybe a correction on whatever the prior interpretation was of what the value was. But this property was listed, I think, at 4.2. I'm not saying it's worth 4.2. It could be worth 3 million. It could be worth something in the middle. Don't know. Haven't seen an appraisal. I would like to hear from the tax assessor to know exactly what that is. And I also would like this commission to have guidance on how we're supposed to carry out our own regulations. Because I thank you very much, Mr. Wendt. He gave us a list of all the subdivisions we've done since 1997. All the ones that had fee in lieu, they add up to 1.45 million fee in lieu, but the amount we actually got was around 1.15 because some of them didn't get done or things like that. But if that's been undervalued, we could be missing $1 million or something in our open space funds. So this is important. Our ability to participate in preserving open space requires that we have money, and I don't want to undervalue it. So while I appreciate the fact that this development is, it's a good development, I still feel like, we have to follow our regulation. And when it says shall, that means it has to be done. And I don't think that we're doing it. So for those two interesting, semi-confusing issues, I feel that we need more information so we know how to interpret our regs and that we're doing our regulations the right way. I do feel also that if one lot was carved off, it would kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. It would not require open space under any interpretation. And it would also enable that hillside with the trees that I really feel should be preserved, could be preserved better. And I think it's valuable open space. So that's one other thing. But I know we can't, I suppose I don't think we can require that because that would be beyond the open space requirement. We could require one of the lots to be affordable. And I believe it's viable because when the applicant came before us, it was stated that this property could viably be developed somewhere between, I think, 8 and 10 units. I don't know if that's including the house or not including the house, but anyway, you look at it, 8 new and 1 existing is within that range of viability. So I don't want to say we have to dedicate one, but I think we need a legal opinion to figure out what our regulations, how that should be interpreted by the town attorney, as well as the open space. And I would like to have the assessor come so we do this the right way going forward. So we're not shorting our open space fund.
Commissioner Collins.
I concur with Kathy in reference to bring in, having the town attorney go over some of these things in a little bit more detail.
I'm having trouble hearing, sorry.
I kind of
Okay.
concur with you about,
Hearing aid for next time.
I concur with the bringing in the town attorney and get some sort of, clearer assessment of what's going on.
Commissioner Harrison?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Braun, Commissioner Collins. And I also don't understand how we get an updated valuation. I served on the Board of Assessment Appeals, and I think the only group that can make an updated valuation is the Board of Assessment Appeals. So I'd like more clarity into the valuation from the text, from the assessor, and also see comparables and, what he did to come to this conclusion. Also during the public hearing, Ms. Martin and Attorney LeClaire brought up an interesting legal argument, and the proposed developer said the farmstead is habitable based on what he believes. And Ms. Martin, who toured the building, from what I understand, said it isn't. So can we get an opinion on what the situation is? Can we have the health director and maybe the zoning enforcement officer go into the house and determine if it is habitable? Because that would have a lot of implications on our decision. So yeah, I think moving to table it is the best decision.
So moving to table, I mean, we've done that in the past for additional time to review materials. If you get additional materials from town agencies, getting a legal opinion could be done for that. Correct me if anybody thinks I'm wrong, to attorneys, I guess more than anybody else. I just can't imagine the town attorney giving a specific advice other than how it's read and we having to make the decision based on what the regulations state. I mean, that's just how I expect Attorney Baldwin or whomever, and whoever to come back with is not exactly probably how you expect the attorney giving, well, if you think this, then this, or this, I just don't expect that to happen. Having the town assessor come and give evidence I don't think is proper. It reopens the hearing by all accounts. Now, he may be able to give additional commentary or additional analysis as he's a town official to do that, and I think that would be appropriate for a table, but I don't think he can come and testify. That reopens everything, so to speak. I'm not sure how that would work. And we've discussed this in the past. The regulation says that the two parties, the commission and the applicant, is to jointly choose an appraiser, and our pass is always to go with the appraised value through the town, and that's been the parties jointly agree to an appraiser. And if we were to go forward with the town assessor, who is an appraiser, I mean, all the town assessments are based on fair market value. They are appraisals. We would be following the regulation by agreeing to use those figures from the town assessor's office or from the town assessor himself. So, I mean, that's been past practice. And going through that, I don't think in any way impairs our duty to follow the regulations. In many respects, has been past practice that does conform with the regulations. I can expect that the applicant rightfully expected that to occur, and if we're gonna move away from that, then so be it, but we need to give applicants fair warning of that, I think. I mean, part of me I think we should go through these and discuss them, whether we end up tabling the item later anyways, because this is right now a motion to table, so we shouldn't be going too substantively into the issues, because there's the motion is to table and whether we need additional information, not necessarily to go through why I think maybe that the application should be approved in certain ways and discuss that. So maybe it's worth making a substantive motion to have the discussion to see where we are after a reasonable time. We can still have the motion to table. We've done that in the past as well. Most notably, actually, with the regulation amendments we just have 81 Black Rock Turnpike, where we had a bunch of regulations. We ended up going through them and we tabled them and we came back and did what we did with them. So that would be my only suggestion, that it might be worth having a substantive talk. If the idea is the table to get additional information as to how appraiser or the town assessor, the appraiser here, came to his conclusion, I think that is more, that can be done with a table. That can be, and we can certainly ask the town attorney, maybe he'll give us more guidance than I'm expecting. I think anything above that would be unfairly opening up or impermissibly opening up the hearing. Commissioner Brayman, and then I'll go back on my left.
I've heard everything that everybody said. I don't agree with tabling this item because I don't think this gets any easier for us to decide. I think the evidence has been laid out and the law is what it is. And you can vote to approve the subdivision, you can vote to deny the subdivision. But I don't see the town attorney, as the chairman stated, dictating to the commission how we should interpret the regulation or how we should decide that issue. And I don't see the town assessor, who is the one who determines the appraised value and assessed value of every property in town, giving us information that enables us to conclude, yes, we will approve this subdivision. Well, I think we have the information that we need in order to make the decision. The question is how we decided on the merits.
Even when the town attorney comes back with something, doesn't mean you have to accept it or not, so I mean. Going over, I saw your hand, so go Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, I'll just say, I wanna follow our regulations. This is the public regulations that we have to adhere to. And 2.3.8 says that we have to get independent appraisal. Mr. Ross, I forgot his last name. Murray, thank you. No, I don't consider him third party. And I don't see any paperwork or any letter confirming that the developer and the town agreed to him as third party appraiser. So I really think it's really important to follow our regulations, even if it's been past practice. You know, there's no time like the present to do something right, and I think we have to do that.
Well, to be clear, the applicant put forth the appraised value. I think it's pretty clear that they're okay going forward with Mr. Murray. And he's not with the zoning, he may be with the town, pretty clear. But I'm not so sure that the regulation has been required that it needs to be somebody that's outside of the town if it's agreed upon by the parties.
Agree, again, I just haven't seen any evidence to say, all right, I'm gonna make the assumption that that was the third party person that the developer wanted, but again, I think it's better to have truly a third party, not someone who works at the town. Again, I just don't understand how the valuation was updated. Again, only the BAA can do that from what I remember being on that board. And I think we really need to look at this deeper. Thank you.
Commissioner Braun and Francis.
So the regulation 2.3.8 says, in the event that the fee is required by the commission, such payment shall be equal to not more than 10% of the fair market value of the land to be subdivided prior to the approval of the subdivision. And it says the fair market value shall be determined by an appraiser jointly selected by the commission and the subdivider. We did not pick a tax assessor to do the appraisal, to my knowledge. That would have required a vote or a decision. Secondly, the appraisal, I know also, one other point I forgot to raise before, it omits the house, and I don't understand why the house is being omitted from the appraisal. So that the updated, assessor's opinion, whatever you wanna call it. I don't think it's an appraisal, but, so the original one we got said 925. The new one says 1.2, but that's net of around 400,000 for the old farmhouse. I don't know why that's not in there, since that is the pre-development value, and the farmhouse is staying. So what is the logic for taking that out? It knocks another 300,000 or 400,000 off the value. I don't understand the logic of, I'd like to get an answer from the tax assessor as to why he determined that the house is not being demolished, so it's staying there. Isn't that part of the pre-development value? I don't understand why that's being taken off, because that reduces it again. And also, I don't think this is a situation where our past practice should be used if it violates regulations. I think if we know we're not following our regulations, we need to stop not following our regulations. And I don't think we should or can rely on past practice to continue that. And I don't think we have to give people notice that we're gonna follow our regulations now. So I do think it's very, very important to get an opinion from the town attorney on the open space one, but also on the affordable housing. Because if that lot should be included, then we have no choice. We have to dedicate one to affordable housing. These houses go for $1.8 to $2 million up on Stilson Road. Up in the higher end if they're on a cul-de-sac, I imagine. So, you know, and this property could be worth 3 or 4 million. That's a big, this project is viable with or without an affordable house. I don't think there's a concern that it can't be constructed if we require one to be affordable. And again, we have to follow our regulations, and I would like an interpretation of what our regulations are.
Be clear, and I think I said it earlier, I believe our past practices is in line with our regulations. Just to be clear about that, because I thought I said it. Commissioner Francis.
It seems to me that the crux of this is whether it's a 9-lot or a 10-lot subdivision, whether it's regarded as a development, including the farmhouse or not. And all this talk about land, having land, open space donated or funds donated is irrelevant if we determine that it's a 9-lot. Is that not true?
I think if it's a 9 versus 10 lot development would determine whether we need an affordable housing component to it. If it's 9, then we don't. The 9 or 10 would still trigger either a fee in lieu of open space or a designation for open space.
A 9?
Which is why, again, I would say, I think we should move forward with a substantive discussion to see where we are, but
9 requires land or funding?
that's, yes.
5 or more lots or 4 or more acres. So whether it's, so I agree with the chair's analysis, the 9 or the 10 question is not relevant to the open space fee. It's relevant to the whether or not it triggers the inclusionary requirement.
That's a requirement. Commissioner Braun.
One other point, I don't know if the person who argued and came here has standing to file this case. But if the person does have standing, then we need to be sure we're following our regulations, that's all. And that's an interpretation we need to make. And yeah, it's easy to conflate the two issues because they both relate to 10% of something. But yeah, the property value relates only to 10% open space. Whether it's 9 or 10 units relates only to whether it's requires one of them to be affordable.
In your mind, Commissioner Braun, is it worth having a substantive discussion and discussing tabling later, or do you wanna have a vote on the tabling now?
I think we have to know what the interpretation is from of our regulations from our town attorney. I don't see how, if we don't know if we don't know legally what we're required to require in terms of whether the value for the open space or whether one of the units has to be affordable, then I don't see how that would affect other things as well.
I understand that, but I think I have like responses to those. I don't wanna get into it with a motion to table, because it substantively addresses the motion. I mean, I guess I can to give a preview, but I mean, that's why I would suggest it might be worth taking the 20 minutes or so to have a motion, substantive discussion about it. I mean, we can all, we've all had to look at our regulations and apply them in the past. This is nothing that we haven't seen before. It's a little more, some would say murky. I'm not so sure it is, to be frank. And it might be worth having that discussion instead of having a vote on the motion to table. Commissioner Braun, I mean, I just.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Commissioner Levy, go ahead. Just 'cause-
Yeah, I'd be prepared to make a motion, a substantive motion to approve, subject to the restrictions, recited by staff and with a fee in lieu of if, the chair wants to entertain it at this point.
Well, we have a motion to table on and I'll,
Mm.
that's why I was directing that to Commissioner Braun first to see if how she felt about having the discussion first. I mean, I wouldn't have the vote. I mean, what I would suggest is this. And you can do it, Commissioner Braun or Commissioner Levy can do it, is withdraw the motion to table, have a substantive discussion under a motion to, maybe under Commissioner Levy or anybody. But then what I would say is whoever makes the motion will withdraw that motion, subject to Commissioner Braun coming on to see if how the motion to table goes, because I would think it would be unfair. For example, I mean, I think it would probably lead to the same thing at the end of the day. If, for example, 4 people wanted to grant it today, that would mean it would be 4 against your table, the motion to table. But, I mean, I will let your motion to table take the first vote, is my point.
So what?
No,
I'm
I know.
really confused.
I would suggest this, if it's up to you. I will let the first vote we have will be on your motion to table. But what I would suggest is withdraw your motion to table. Let's put a motion. I'll let you put a motion on. It can be decline, it could be to deny, for all I care, but just something substantive. So I'll let you take it, you do the deny if you want, if that's kind of where not where you're headed, but at least for discussion purposes, so you can control the vote. But I would like to have a substantive discussion is my point. So maybe withdraw the motion to table, have a motion to grant or deny for discussion purposes. Let's have a discussion, see where we are, and I'll let you decide on how you wanna move forward, either by whatever motion you have being voted on, or you withdrawing your motion and then reasserting your motion to table.
Once we have a substantive discussion, there will be a motion, it will be voted on.
I'm telling you that what I would happen is, this is what I would suggest.
Okay.
Withdraw your motion to table, you make a motion to either grant or deny for discussion purposes, whichever you choose. And then at the end, you, as you're the movant, will decide whether to move forward on that substantive motion or to withdraw and to reassert your motion to table.
I'm not really up on Robert's rules. Is that allowed?
Full control for you.
Yes, let's just say it is.
Point of information.
Can we have?
As Commissioner Braun is thinking, go ahead, Commissioner.
I get what you're doing. I think it's very fair and I appreciate that. I do. But I'm a little concerned that when this motion were to proceed, I'm just not prepared to vote yay or nay. To be honest with you, I need more information that I've stated.
Which is fine, I mean, but here's the thing too, I mean, like I said, let's assume you would move forward with a motion to table. If you win, you win. If you lose, we're going, motion to table defeated, we're going to defeat the substantive discussion anyways.
I just want the right decision, not win or lose. No.
So you're saying
I mean, listen,
I withdraw the motion to table and make a motion, whatever, deny because I don't have enough information. Then
I just want a substantive,
I could still ask for a motion to table at the end of that?
yes.
Okay, then I'll do that then. I'll withdraw the motion to table.
I just think having a substantive discussion is worth having. Maybe I'm wrong and it leads to nothing. But I would think it's worthwhile to do it now.
So on that
Assuming you're-
basis, I'll withdraw the motion to table and make a motion to deny based on lack of information.
Commissioner Collins, you're second, is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So, having said that,
I just have concerns about this because I want to do right by the applicant, by everybody, and I would want to I want to make a really good decision and I'm
well,
and if
Commissioner Braun,
it's not tabled and if we continue, let's just say that we do table it and the majority's in favor of it, that, the applicant still has a chance. I feel like tonight it's gonna die or it'll live. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not sure.
listen, Commissioner Braun jumped in with her motion to table, which is fair. And I had asked her, it's my opinion, it's worth having a substantive discussion, which we cannot do under a motion to table. So, and I am promising her that the next motion that whatever vote happens will either be on her motion to deny after a substantive discussion or her motion to table. So she jumped in, she was first in line, I'm gonna let her kind of control that aspect of it. So, and to be honest, listen, at the end of the day, at the end of this substantive discussion, if there's 4 commissioners who feel one way or another about a substantive motion, then that's how it works. Therefore, those 4 people felt comfortable doing that. That's how it works, so I mean. Okay, motion to deny is on the table. Commissioner Braun, I know I'm putting you on the spot with it because of where I am. Like to discuss any more what you've said, or you gonna go on to where there's some people have a substantive opinion on the matter?
I think if one lot was removed, again, it would eliminate any question about open space valuation well, no, maybe not open space valuation, but it would eliminate any question about affordable housing or inclusionary zoning. And that's troubling me. I don't want to not follow our regulations. And we've heard, you know, people on this commission say there's not enough affordable housing on this side of town. There should be one here. I don't give a value judgment on that. I'm just saying this is a place that many people would say needs one. We heard that from a member of the public, and we've heard it from members of the commission that the west side of town doesn't have enough affordable housing. That's exactly what the inclusionary zoning regulation is supposed to achieve. So without having that interpretation, I don't know. I think on a substantive level, I have a question about the traffic report. Basically looking left when you're exiting where the cul-de-sac comes out, that's really my main issue. It's only 1 foot off. It needs 310, it has 309. That's very, very close. My recollection, I didn't print the right documents, but my recollection is that the traffic speed study was done at the end of June, which might be when it's slowing down for the summer. And, you know, that's cutting it very close on a hill, a curve, requires a lot of extra stuff to make it safer, cutting trees down, adding signage. I don't think it's a safe hill. I've been driving that since I was 16. And I don't think there's adequate sight line looking to the left when you're exiting the cul-de-sac. When it's 1 foot above what's required, that's too close for me. So I don't think there's adequate sight line. But more importantly, I think if you knock down at least one lot, that could satisfy the affordable housing issue. And it would also make me more inclined to accept it, less traffic going in and out. You know, one fewer house, more open space, less degradation of our natural environment. So that's basically where I stand on that.
Mr. Collins, you're second. Do you have this motion to deny for discussion purposes? Do you have comments?
Just what I said before, and try to farmhouse. I'm thinking, is it inhabitable now? Is it inhabitable? Are they redoing it? Are they tearing it down and leaving the just the footprint of it?
You asking, I'm sorry, asking me? Okay. My understanding was the footprint was staying the same and that they were gonna renovate it to update it. Yeah, I mean, so it's gonna remain a single family residence. It's gonna be updated from however old the property is.
And I just was my concern was to maybe, you know, have the town attorney come make some assessment on it legally.
Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, just through you, if I may, to Mr. Collins, I did ask, I don't know if you heard me before, I did ask if we could see if this house is habitable at Farmstead, because we heard from the developer, yes, that it is. We also heard from Ms. Martin, who's head of the Fairfield Housing Authority, who walked the property, said it wasn't. So I'd like to have more visibility into that. Thank you.
Commissioner Braun, if it's, go
I
ahead.
forgot to say one thing. I just wanna just clarify again. There's two bases for allowing that farmhouse to be considered part of the 10 lot. One is, I believe, if it's part of the development, meaning it's gonna be developed. So if it needs to be remodeled, cause it really can't be lived in now, that goes in that supports that. Also, the plans themselves call it a 10 lot subdivision. They don't call it a 9 lot subdivision. But the other basis is that the regulation allows flexibility for us to include tracts of land, other adjacent tracts of land owned, controlled, or under agreement to buy by the subdivider. So if you don't include, the farmhouse, you could arguably include it under that clause. That we have flexibility to add to the number of lots if it's under the control of the same subdivider. This is. So even if you don't think it's part of the new houses being built, it's under the control of the same subdivider. And it is a house that is part of the subdivision according to their own plans. So based on all of that, it could be that we have to have one, dedicated to affordability.
Well, I mean, do you mind if I jump in? Thank you. We have a few, I think Commissioner Francis hinted to it. Keystone issues that need to be addressed by this. 9 versus 10 development, and then the fee in lieu of. I think those are kind of the big ticket items. Can we agree with that? Pretty clearly, I think, okay. So the fee in lieu I've kind of discussed already, but I'll say it again. Since we have this more substantive talk and I thought maybe I was holding back a little too much. The regulations require the parties, the applicant and the commission to select an appraiser. I think I'm not sure if the regulations say independent or not, we go back and forth on it, but that's okay. And that's what our past practice has been, was for the applicants and the commission to choose the assessed value, which is based on fair market value. And while I'm sure in all those previous applications, the parties choose that value to go forward, wasn't there. It in fact happened because the applicant suggesting it, we accepted it, that's how it works. Will happen here. Have we, as a commission, really officially chosen that the town assessment as that? We would if we approved it. That would be my response to that. So again, I do believe if we followed our past precedent, which I think any applicant has the right to expect of us without previous notice, we would be following our regulations. So, and I'm comfortable in what has been presented to me about what the appraisal is. I don't know how assessments would come into play in this respect, because that deals with an appeal of a residential tax assessment, well, any assessment, but any assessment, that's when they come in. This is just an appraisal. And we have Mr. Murray's appraisal that we can rely upon. And it increased, which is great. For whatever reason, his reason for that it needs to be updated, that was great. So I'm still comfortable taking the fee in lieu of, because we are actually still getting land that they are gonna hold off on developing. Now, whether that was natural or not, it could have always knocked down the trees if they so wanted, but we are actually getting somewhat the best of both worlds. And I'm not gonna say that the open space that they're dedicating to us was the exact amount of open space we'd have gotten, but we are getting it, and we're getting money that we can use moving forward. And I don't know that another appraiser would have come out with anything different if they're appraising the lot as is, which is not, again, what the lot could be if it's subdivided, as I understand it, but what it currently is. Single family lot, that's huge, to be frank, but still there. It's not as if he's gonna be looking to, well, it can be split up in certain ways, and this is what it could be, and it's 300,000 for each of these lots, and that's not, as I understand it, how it's done. So I think that the appraisal is a fair one. And again, what we've done in the past, which I think if we accept it is in line with our regulations, and the applicant is on board with it as well. So the next part, 10 versus 9 development. Regulation says each plan of subdivision or re-subdivision of a tract or parcels of land that involves the development, back to that, of 10 or more dwelling units, come back to that, shall include provisions to set aside not less than 10% or whatever, the rest of it. So nothing would have actually made me happier if the housing authority didn't come and have like application to this. And I don't mean this meanly against the current applicant, but we do sorely need affordable housing in that area, not just the town, but in that area. And the Fairfield Housing Authority is in great hands, and I would have loved to have seen what they could have done here. We don't. She aptly put, I believe, they had a right to do what they did, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that was as fair as a statement as I can remember the last few months. So we have this application in front of us, and the question is it a 20%? Or excuse me, is it development of 10 or more dwelling units or 9 dwelling units? It's 10 if the current residence is taken into account. It's 9 if the current residence is not taken into account. So I don't believe that the current residence constitutes a development of a unit, of an additional unit. Perfect evidence is given to us, by all accounts, a legislative history of the regulation at issue, where it was, and it was quoted to us, but it was a net increase of 10 or more dwelling units. We don't have a net increase of it. We have just a net increase of 9. And I asked Attorney Leclerc, well, what does a development mean in your mind? And I pinned him down to saying replacement the windows means a development. I think that's a fair response to what his position was, because it can't get away from it otherwise. And I don't agree with that definition. I can't imagine innovating and updating your house is development of the house. Now, if you were to make it into a duplex, that would be a development, certainly of a unit, because you'd be adding a unit, but even taking what the current characteristic of the lot and making it something different. Here it's a single family residence that's staying in the same footprint, but even if it wasn't, I don't think it would matter, but it's staying in the same footprint. It's remaining a single family residence. I don't see that as a development to begin with, but even go into the language, it's not a matter of lots. And yes, it's a 10 development lot. That's true, because they're actually making one lot into 10. The question is whether they're developing 10 or more dwelling units. So that pretty clearly to me means that they are only making 9 more units, because the 10th is currently existing. And if you go back to the legislative history, actually from the Housing Authority, I think, right? Was that the applicant, Mr. Wendt?
The Affordable Housing Committee.
I take that back. So the Affordable Housing Committee, still affordable housing related, had made the language that it was a net increase in units, which using that I think the plain language of the regulation clearly supports what I'm proposing and what the applicant's proposing. But if you even go down the legislative history, that's even more clear in my mind, at least. So the next point to that was go down lower. It was a question of whether it's owned, controlled, the adjacent property. The argument that was put forth. Language says, in determining the total number of units of any subdivision, Commission may consider not only the tract or tracts of land to be immediately subdivided, which is the 10 right now. They also but also any other adjacent tracts or tracts owned, controlled, or under agreement to buy. So you make an interesting point, Commissioner Braun, about whether the 10th was an adjacent property that should be considered into this. I think the plain language shows that that's not to be considered, because the Commission may consider not only the tract or tracts of land to be immediately subdivided, that would include the current existing residents. But you may also, it's the adjacent tracts from this application, which would be the 10 lot at issue. And we went through those, and I asked Attorney Leclerc, well, Attorney Leclerc, and I think he agreed to me, ownership was because we went through the lots that he had, and at the time, there may have been, if you went back in time, for one of the adjacent tracks. The question was, and he agreed with me, I thought was pretty clear, I wanted to make sure, because this was somewhat different and a little, well, let's just say it's different. Question was whether there were adjacent tracks that were controlled by the applicants and by the current applicant, and I don't believe there was any evidence given to that. The best that was given was at the time, I think it had to do, it was in the estate. But currently the track, that definitely takes out the applicant's sand dollar. The question was whether the current owner, beneficiary or an heir, had control over it while it was in the estate. There was no evidence presented to that. If anything, she's presented evidence to us that she went through a lot of scenarios before she settled on this. So I don't see how, I don't think there's any evidence of control over it. The best that I think Attorney Leclerc could come up with was joint ownership at the time, or excuse me, similar ownership at the time. And he agreed with me that ownership was out the window, it was control. No evidence as to control. So, I mean, as to the site, and I'll say just about the site with the sight lines, Commissioner Braun brought up it being 1 foot over is not sufficient. I mean, if that's the case, I don't know if 2 or 3 in your mind does either, but it did meet our sight line. It did meet the sight lines. Our engineering agreed with it. Going 1 above, to me, I don't think is a basis to say not enough is given. Even if it was 1 below, I'd be like, well, it's only a foot, and we're going by stopping distance. I think it probably met that as well. So, overall, recognize that I'm an attorney. I'm able to read, well, everybody can read. I apologize for that. I don't mean to insult, but reading regulations and statutes is turning into second nature for me. In my mind, plain reading of these, the inclusionary zoning, it's the 9 versus 10 and the controlled and ownership and the adjacent tracks and stuff. To me, the plain language is clear. And getting an opinion from town council, understand where other members of the commission would like that. I don't know what he can give other than saying, look at this and laying it out. I think as I've laid it out, and as to the fee in lieu, I mean, that's, as I said, I think our past practice is in line with regulations. If the idea is you wanna go outside of town assessments going forward, fine, the commission can certainly agree to that and we can do that. Obviously, I don't know how that procedure would necessarily work off the top of my head, but we can figure that out later. But if you disagreeing with the appraisal value, I don't know what evidence there is that it's wrong or right, but I mean, it is from an appraiser that from the town we use for her own property taxes, so. Having said that, I'll go over to Commissioner Brayman, who I think I jumped ahead of.
Okay, so taking the issues one at a time, in terms of the traffic safety, so this is a road that I drive frequently, many times a week. Nothing is more important to me than safety, obviously, from where we sit. And we would not want to approve anything that was not safe. I think the subdivision as proposed with the recommendations from the traffic report, which I agree with, as well as the recommendations from our engineering department, would actually make Stilson Road and the intersection with Mill Plain more safe than it is today for traffic. So I think it's actually an improvement. And I commend the applicant and the engineering department for taking a hard look at it, recommending certain measures that I think will not only ameliorate whatever additional traffic will be caused by the development, but also make it better than existing conditions. In terms of the affordable housing requirement, so I appreciate that the housing authority came to us with an argument for creating additional affordable housing in Fairfield, particularly in this neighborhood. And I think they had a right to do so, and I think that there may be some, lingering ambiguity in the effect of the regulation about 9 versus 10 units. However, I think the legislative history that was put forward to us is overwhelming evidence that the Affordable Housing Committee itself, at the time the regulation was amended, contemplated that, the creation of a net additional 10 units was what was going to trigger the affordable housing requirement. And I think there's many ways that it could have been made clear if this regulation was intended to apply to the preservation of an existing unit, which happens frequently in development, where you have one or more existing units and you're only creating or developing additional units, you're leaving the others alone. If this regulation was intended to capture the situation where you're keeping one house or unit as it is, but creating 9, I think it could have been very, very clear in this regulation. That was not the plain language of the regulation as I read it, and it certainly wasn't the legislative intent as I saw in the memorandum. And I think we would risk unfairness or even lack of due process if we applied a new interpretation with respect to appraisal to the applicant on this application in the middle of the application. Switching gears to the fee in lieu. So we did preliminarily recommend as a commission that we accept a fee in lieu of the open space. We are not bound by that. We could say, no, we don't want a fee in lieu at all. We want the creation of open space, and that's within the discretion of every commissioner to decide. Commissioners could also vote on the merits here that they don't agree either with the appraisal, the appraiser that is proposed by the applicant and has been consented to by the commission and every other subdivision that we've had with a fee in lieu since the 1990s. And you could determine that you're not going to approve the subdivision or you're not going to accept the fee in lieu because you don't agree with the appraisal. I think, as the chairman stated, if the commission votes to accept the appraised value that was put forward by the applicant and acceptable to the town's chief appraiser, the tax assessor, who uses the mass appraisal methodology and appraising the value of every property in town, then we will have accepted and agreed upon that appraisal as well as that appraised value. So I don't see us having violated our regulations in every instance where we've accepted the appraised value from the town assessor. The applicant has agreed to accept that value. I think if we want to consider a process going forward where we would, have a list of independent appraisers that the applicant and the commission would go through somehow and choose somebody to do it, I don't see what benefit that would, especially in the case where you're valuing bare land, unimproved land. But we should not apply it retroactively to this applicant, even if we did want to pursue that process. I think that the appraised value that's been put forward here is something that commissioners are free to accept or reject. I for one think it's reasonable. I'm pleased that it increased. And I think that if we're inclined to accept a fee in lieu, we should accept the fee in lieu calculated based on that appraised value, and that we will be following our regulations and doing so. I think those were the major issues that were the subject of the discussion. So I would approve the subdivision with the 6 conditions that were proposed by the traffic report and the engineering firm.
Commissioner Levy, just because you're by the phone and I can't tell
Yeah.
you have
Yeah, I have little more to add. I concur with the opinions expressed by you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Brayman. And again, in terms of the appraisal, again, it speaks of the value of the land. So of course, the value of the house would not be a factor. We're basically dealing here with the value of land, a very large lot, of course, but before the subdivision, basically as a lot for a single family residence. I'm also very familiar with the area, and I concur that the proposal would likely make Stilson Road there and Mill Plain safer. Procedurally, I'm a little bit concerned if we go forward on this motion to deny, whereby someone who might otherwise feel that they require more information and would want the matter tabled would, on a substantive motion, accordingly deny it. So I leave that to you, Mr. Chairman, as to how to figure procedurally where to go from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Braun.
The open space provision, 2.3.8 of the subdivision regs, is quite clear. It says fair market value, that means today, not 5 years ago, whenever the town appraised it, shall be determined by an appraiser jointly selected by the commission and the subdivider. That was not done. We did not pick an appraiser, and we don't know if the subdivider picked an appraiser. We got something from our tax assessor, an email with about 5 lines in it. And I don't know how he came up with that value, because the number matches what's in the field card, which is from 5 years ago. That cannot possibly be fair market value. So I think violating our regulations is a non-starter. That's a shall. Shall is mandatory. We don't really have a choice. So I would like our town attorney to indicate whether I'm right or whether there's 5 lawyers on this commission. And I'm one of them. That's my interpretation. We've all been doing statutory interpretation, but the town attorney, that's his job, and he should be advising us. And as far as the inclusionary zoning, I disagree on the interpretation of my fellow commissioners on that also. I believe the intent is to allow us the flexibility and these are both remedial provisions in our regulations to add to our inventory of open space or affordable housing. That's why we're given flexibility in both those regulations. So in either of my interpretations that I won't repeat again, it could easily be interpreted that it should be 10 lots. And that opens us up to all kinds of charges that we just don't want to put affordable housing on this side of town, or that, we're not really following our own regulations or the intent of our own regulations. So I'd like to resume my tabling of this. I'm still cloudy on the procedure here. I'd like to resume my tabling and get the tax assessor to give us his data or detail that backs up the appraisal that's already in the record, whatever he calls that email he sent us. I'd like to have that expanded on. I think that's allowed, that we've done that before. And I also don't think we have to give advance notice to the public that we intend to follow our own regulations. I think we should just follow our own regulations, and we don't have to tell the public that we're going to. I think people are well represented. They have lawyers, they can read the regulations. Everybody can read the regulations, and we need to follow the regulations. The question is, what does the regulation mean? If we're not following it, that's wrong. So I'd like
to help me understand something. You say we have flexibility in the 2.7. And at least the first sentence has that shall, which you've noticed in the just for the in lieu of is mandatory. Can you help me understand what the language is for the flexibility in that respect?
The open space says you can also look at adjacent properties to determine if you have enough, let's see, where is it?
You talking about open space or the inclusionary zoning?
What are you talking about? I'm answering your question.
No, I know, and I thought you had said for 2.7, the inclusionary zoning,
They both allow you to look at adjacent property under the same control. And I believe this farmhouse would fall under that definition as well as under the definition of being part of the development. Because it has to be changed. It cannot be lived in the way it is now. No heat, we've heard from people that did inspections. And the plans themselves call it a 10-lot subdivision.
I know,
It's calling itself a 10-lot subdivision.
I agree with that, but
It's not saying 9-lot subdivision,
it's not a matter of lots, it goes by units.
or 10-unit subdivision. It calls
You
it,
just changed it though, but it's 10-lot subdivision. They're saying they're only building 9 dwelling units. It's the shall, which is not discretionary, I think. You were saying that earlier with the fee in lieu of. And I disagree, I mean, I went through at least that second portion, the adjacent tracks.
shall include 10% once you determine if there's 9 or 10. Or
Dwelling units.
once it reaches 10, then you shall have
Exactly.
Once 10% of them be affordable.
You have 10 or more dwelling units.
I believe they have it.
Okay, because you keep saying going back and forth between units and lots. But your position that's new construction of 9 dwelling units plus how the current residence is and may be updated is the development of 10 dwelling units.
Calling it a 10-lot subdivision.
You know, but again, the regulations are 10 or more dwelling units. So I would think lots goes out the side, right? I don't care if they can call it 100 lots. They can make 100 lots and only put 9 dwelling units on it. It would still be below that. That would probably be a problem in its own right there. So I mean, I think, again, whether it's lots is somewhat irrelevant. It's dwelling units. Now, when you go down to, again, you've said it again, the current residence should be considered as an adjacent tract, right?
Could be, yeah.
Because when I read that language, that's the second sentence of 2.7. Determining the total number of units of any subdivision, commission may consider not only the tract or tracts of land to be immediately subdivided. So the tracts or tracts of land to be immediate subdivided are the 10 lots, right? We think. To me, the language says that 10, consider not only the tract or tracts of land to be immediately subdivided. That would be the 10 lots, but also any other adjacent tracts or tracts owned, controlled, or whatever. So that, to me, I don't think you can take that existing residence on the 10th lot to mean adjacent tracts owned or controlled.
I think that's the intent of the regulation.
But I don't think that's the plain language of the regulation. So I don't know how, I mean, I disagree with that, because I mean, you go by intent with plain language. That's where I'm getting confused is it's in this second part of the determinant, in this second sentence, considering the total number of units, again, in units there, may consider not only the tract or tracts of land to be immediately subdivided. That's this 10-lot subdivision, including the existing residence. They also consider other adjacent tracts. The adjacent tracts are outside of the 10 lots, in my reading. So I don't think there's a lot of flexibility in this respect. Do you have the development of 10 or more dwelling units? That's the first part. I don't think you do, because as I said, and as it's been repeated, in the memo that was kind of the legislative history of this, it's a the intent was for net increase in dwelling units. You have that, plus the language itself, the development of 10 or more dwelling units. That existing lot is not the development of a dwelling unit, it's existing. So, I mean, that's where I wanted to kind of flush that out. Disagree, as you know, that it is what it is, but that's where I was getting confused. Commissioner Francis, did I see your hand go up?
No, but I will ask, this 3.72 acres includes the 9 lots and the 1 house residence.
Yes.
Includes all 10.
9
Exactly.
empty lots in that's what the house in it.
Correct.
And the house is included in this tenant, that's why they call it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we see that, as Commissioner Braman rightly said, you have one house,
Yeah.
you subdivide it, so there's now two lots with the existing house. We see that all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of where it's part of. So, I mean, again, you know, we can go to the fee in lieu if you wish, but I mean, like I said, I disagree that we're not following our regulations because we have an appraiser. Appraisal is the town assessment. We have it updated in this respect, so it's not from 5 years. And do you have the field card with you? Okay, cause I was getting confused as to that's what I wanna talk
You
about.
go on vision appraisal and the field card is on.
For vision appraisal. So
I
if you
was
look
getting
at,
confused as to what you were referring to.
if you look at the field card, and this is not adding new evidence, right? This is the basis on which he based it. The 1.2 is here, okay? And this is based, although it was printed today, okay, I printed it today. It has today's day that I printed, but it's based on the last appraisal we did in the town, which was, I believe, during the pandemic in
Yeah.
2020.
That's including the building. So the total appraised value, total appraised parcel value in the field card, 1,202,800. That includes 925,900 for the land alone. And then the balance of that 1,200,000 and change is the building, the existing house, and outbuilding.
What's the updated appraisal? I don't know why I put that in quotation.
1.2.
The fair market value all in is 1.593 with the land component of 1.226 and improvements of 336 and change.
What, say it again? 1,000,000, what is this? Mr. Murray has updated the appraisal of land.
Moving the total 1.593,
Thank you, that's helpful.
land being 1.226 and improvements of 366 and change.
So he did not, if the land value that he has updated is 226,818.
Correct.
That is different than the field cards.
Correct.
Appraised parcel value of $1,202,800.
The apples to apples comparison is to the appraised land value and the field card of 925,900.
Thank you, I misspoke.
Yeah, the
So,
land went to 925 and change to 1.226.
okay, but the land, I think what Commissioner Braun had said was this new value of 1,226,818 is on the field card. I don't see it there.
I see 1.2 on the field card, but,
That's, yeah, I'm sorry.
You see the appraised, you're looking at the appraised value somewhere, right?
well, I saw 1.2 and I see 1.2 on the field card.
I know, but but the 1.2 is, not the full amount. What you're seeing is, and correct me, please, we have to get on the same page. You're looking at $1,202,800, right?
Are you on the landline valve? So,
I'm looking at GSI, excuse me.
right, but there's a section called landline valuation section.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
total land value at the bottom right corner of the first page of the field card.
$925,900. Which is what we were initially given to us, right?
Correct.
So what I'm trying to understand is, because Commissioner Braun had said, I think, and if I'm wrong, Commissioner Braun, please correct me. I thought you had said that the updated value from Mr. Murray reflected a value that was already on the field card.
It's hard to tell exactly from what he used. I assumed he used the field card because it was 1.2 and 1.2. But now it looks like maybe he did something to add money to it. I don't know.
This is what his email says. Jim, I have reviewed the sales data and have available and would estimate that a 32.5 increase from October 1st, 2020 revaluation is warranted. I reviewed the overall town data, the neighborhood, homes of similar size and lot size to arrive at the 32.5% increase.
Not an appraisal.
I do not have any separate data concerning land value and would therefore apply the percentage to each component to arrive at a fair market value of 1,593,710 or a land value of 1,226,818 and improvements of 366. Okay. So it looks, and I agree, listen, this is not like an appraisal you see for mortgages or something that would probably be used in a tax appeal. Those are those bank forms that we're used to, or something that's much longer as well. But this is what he's given us as to update our fair. Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, I was on the Board of Assessment Appeals in 2020 during the reval. It's a very long deliberation because we think, as a board, we saw, I think, something like 500 revals. It was a very, anyway, in any case, what Mr. Murray, in all due respect, that is a 5-sentence email is not an appraisal. I would get stacks, books of appraisals, comparables. When he presented to me, if I were the applicant, I don't know if that would satisfy me. That just isn't really what we need. There's no backup. If he is an appraisal that, I'm sure that he is, but we need backup. Why hasn't he presented that? I mean, to me, that's not adequate.
No, listen, if you're looking for an appraisal like that, it is what it is. But as we've said, I don't think the regulation requires a appraisal report. It's land valuation from an appraiser. Doesn't require a report, even if we're used to that. And all the assessments, all the all the appraisals we've relied upon in the past were from field cards and the like, which normally are based on, as you said,
The mass appraisal.
mass appraisals, which is what we always use for those things. So I mean, if we're not comfortable with that moving forward or now, that's fine, but I don't think it's inappropriate or improper of us to rely upon this. I think it's proper if we decide to.
I also think that the Board Assessment Appeals would have to change the valuation of it. Is that correct? Or the appraisal of it? No?
It's done every 5 years, and we're asking for an update as of now for something different than real estate taxes.
I think we have a lot of questions. This is why I don't feel comfortable voting on this, and I don't know what the situation is with the tabling, but I just.
I said
I've asked for
that
information and
Commissioner Braun is in the driver's seat as to what the motion is to be voted on.
I have another,
About having a substantive discussion like this was.
I would like Mr. Murray, I would like to. What do I do? Withdraw?
Let me ask you this, are we done? Let's ask,
I have another
I just
question.
have a question for everybody. I mean, if we're done with the substantive talk, it's been longer than I thought, 20 minutes, I'm fine with that. So why don't we do this? Unless you have anything more,
Another question about the appraisal though.
oh, then ask it, then we can go back.
So down here, it looks like they're downgrading the value of the land on this field card to 50% based on condition. I don't know what causes that, and I'd like him to explain that.
We're looking at the field.
At the bottom of the field card, it says land line valuation. It says they downgraded probably where the house is based on traffic to 90% under condition. But then they downgraded the 1.7 acres that remains, I guess, for some reason that doesn't give an explanation.
It's excess acreage, so.
They don't give a reason though.
What's the reason that they're
There's no
downgrading
notes.
50%?
So routinely, in field cards, when there's excess acreage beyond that which is required for a buildable lot, it's taxed at a different rate.
Well, maybe
So-
Mr. Murray can
But
explain
that's
that.
part of the value that he's basing this on. That adds up to the 925, which is now he's adding 30% on it to update it, I guess. But that's a basis for his appraisal. I'd like to have him justify the appraisal to us because we all know this property is not going for $1 million. It's going for like 3 million probably. So we just can't be right. And
Well, because that needs to be, I think, Commissioner Braman, go ahead.
I think if there's, couple commissioners who feel like we would benefit on the merits from having more information, and the sole basis for your, voting no on the merits of this application would be that there's some information that we should be getting from the town's assessor or the town's attorney that we don't currently have, that's fine for you to take that position. But I think, perhaps it makes sense to have a vote on whether to table this item and discuss it in a couple of weeks, because I think there is some ambiguity now as to whether people are making a decision based on their conviction about the merits, which frankly may not change based on what the assessor or the town attorney says or does not say, or about a true lack of information we could reasonably obtain in the next couple of weeks.
So done with, are we done with our substantive talk? You
I would,
gracious to give that to me and I appreciate that. I think, again, talking like this either narrows issues or at least you have a chance to kind of vet and go through the issues. So Commissioner Braun, I suspect you want to withdraw the motion to deny and reinsert your motion to table, correct? Commissioner Collins, you're on board with that? There. So, anything final on the matter?
No.
I thought we kind of addressed most of it, right?
dead horse here.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. No. Towards that, that's fine. Okay. All those, right now, the motion is to table the item to request the information that has been requested. Mr. Wendt, I assume you have a list of that information?
I do, if I may, I do agree with your assessment, Mr. Chairman, that I can ask the tax assessor to more fully articulate how we arrived at the difference in value. I agree that you can't have him present to
That's fine.
testify without going back to a new hearing. I'm not sure, and we can certainly reach out to the town attorney, but I also agree that he's likely to say that you are the arbiters of what your regulations mean and is not going to assert his own personal or legal opinion outside of what this commission may ultimately find. So, but we can certainly have dialogue and ask the question.
But do you understand? I think you understand. I mean, obviously, we can get the information from the taxes, well, Mr. Murray, but we can't have new evidence unless we were to deny and then maybe deny without prejudice and have a new application. We have everybody's understanding of that? Cause we can't reopen it and have new evidence. We can certainly do as we just described, Mr. White just described. Want to temper expectations as to what we can seek. Okay, we're still good with that? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to table, please say aye or, hold on, sorry.
Point of information, and I did request that we would see if that house is habitable, the zoning. Is even it as with the health director.
If that can be done without reopening the hearing. And if they can do that, I mean, that's my
I
only,
can certainly ask the opinion of the building official and health director if they have, we would need to, get in and do that with the applicant's permission, but presuming we can do that, I think that opinion would not be beyond.
I agree, I just wanna make sure, again, the idea is we'll do it. So long as it does not improperly add evidence. Okay? That obviously depends on their ability to get there and a variety of other things, but we can worry about that later. Commissioner Francis,
I will move to table in support of my fellow commissioners. I do think we've answered all the questions and that it's 9 lots, in my opinion.
okay. She will support your motion to table, but believes it's 9 lots, right? Was there anything else? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear new units.
She supports your motion to table, but believes we've discussed enough and it's 9 new units. I'm just repeating what she said.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I was.
No, that's fine. I just wanna make sure.
Request for information.
All those favor the motion to table, please raise your hand or say aye. C4, all those opposed,
Opposed?
so motion to table carries 4-3. Thank you for the discussion again, I think it's worth it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna have to sign off at this point.
Good luck.
There's.
Thank. Good night.
Aye. Who's up next? We have a compliance.
Yeah, let me go back to my notes, hang on, sorry.
I'll call it out as you're doing it.
It would be, I'm sorry, it would be Tom. Would be next up.
Commissioner Corsillo, you're jumping in. 883 Black Rock Turnpike zoning compliance application of Westport Place LLC. Change of use of a portion of an existing building to medical office in the neighborhood, design district. What?
Okay, the site is located at the southeasterly corner of Black Rock Turnpike and Jennings Road in the Neighborhood Design District. The existing two-story building for many years was occupied by a law firm. The applicant is the contract purchaser and is proposing to occupy a portion of the second floor for medical use as described in the statement of use for a naturopathic office. There are 32 parking spaces on site. The change in use of a portion of the building to medical would require 5 additional parking spaces than the general office use. The ZBA granted a variance for those 5 space reduction after a public hearing on September the 2nd of this year. There are other general office tenants that will remain in the building as noted on the floor plans. And that is all I have, subject to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Went. May I have a motion on this item? Commissioner Braun,
Motion to approve.
motion to approve. Is there a second? Commissioner Harrison, Commissioner Braun.
So, and I had trouble pulling this up because today is the day of our Newtown website.
I'm sorry about that, but
So I'm just going through it now, but basically there are enough spaces or there are not enough spaces in yeah, I made a motion to approve. Did you say?
I second, okay, sorry.
So it used to be a law office with medical, now it's mostly medical, and they got a variance because they don't have quite enough spaces, basically?
okay. The building complied at the time it was built. And the regulations have changed since that time to require more parking spaces than were required. So the difference here is it's 1 space per 1,000 square feet of overall occupancy. That's a net difference of 5. They don't have the ability to add more spaces. There are 32 spaces on site. And because the regulations changed subsequent to the building of the building, that was the basis for the zoning board of appeals and the fact that there seems to be ample parking. This particular, I think in the letter of intent, there's a statement in there that talks about a lot of the contact with this particular use is online, so they don't have a tremendous number of folks. Not like a typical medical office. There's a fair lot of online counseling and practice that goes on here, so it board felt comfortable that they didn't need those additional 5 parking spaces.
Board of Health.
Board of Appeals.
Oh, see, yeah, I thought you said Board of Health for some reason.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And when this is similar to other ones we've had, when there's not enough parking but ZBA approves it, we just go in and just determine if there's other issues that we have with safety.
Correct. Effectively, the zoning board of appeals has taken the parking issue off the table since they've granted relief of the regulation.
Then I support this application.
Commissioner Harrison,
Nothing further to add.
any other questions or comments from the commission? Put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Go on. Go on. Nope, nope. These 7 hands passes unanimously. Right, on to public hearing. 225 Melville Avenue, special exception and special permit application of town of Fairfield pertaining to the construction of two resident Tungus Hill Park in the resident beach zone.
Just get out of the way.
Mr. Calabrese,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Anthony Calabrese, Director of Parks and Recreation. Before you tonight, we have our proposal to add 2 additional pickleball courts at Tungus Hill Park. This is following our after completion of our master plan in 2022, and hopefully we'll gain your full support of this project. With me presenting the actual details, I have one of our designers, Kurt Lowenstein from Land Tech, and he will walk you through the project. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Mr. Chairman, do I have the ability to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Just share this real quick. Okay. Everybody can see that okay?
Yes, thank you.
So as Anthony said, we worked with the town on the initial phase of this project, which was reconfiguring basically the existing pickleball courts that were there. They were in a little bit of disrepair, and we put in a new post-tension, designed a new post-tension concrete pickleball court complex here was put in. There's 4 courts now there previously, and there are there now. The second phase is what we're here before you tonight is the 2 new pickleball courts that'll be added on to the end. In between the new courts and the existing courts, we're proposing a new patio connecting the 2 spaces with a 10x10 pavilion to provide a little bit of sun, getting out of the sun for folks that are waiting to get onto the court. The entire 2 courts themselves will be sunken into the hill. Anybody that's familiar with Tungus Hill Park and have walked down here, this is a little bit of a slope coming down from the upper parking lot here down to the existing courts. So these new courts will be essentially below grade on 3 sides. So there'll be a retaining wall across the side, back, and other side, and it'll be essentially level with the existing courts that are there now. In addition to the courts and the kind of community space in between here, we're also proposing a new ADA compliant walk down from the upper parking lot to the pickleball courts themselves. We took a little bit of a artistic approach, I would say, to the style of this. What proved difficult is the steepness of the hill, and if we were to run a traditional sidewalk, it would end up running quite a bit out into the slope here. So we elected to go with something that was a little bit more compact, a little bit more outside the box, but provides the same functionality that any normal walk down there would be. So this will be a series of switchbacks. At each turn, there'll be an ADA compliant landing. And then for convenience for folks that are not needing the ADA walkway, there'll be a set of railroad tie steps that follow down straight down the edge of the path here. There's some small repair of the walkway that's in between the courts now. It's just to blend in the grades as we make our way down to the comfort station here. And the other item that's being proposed here is a new connection from the existing pickleball courts, just to make that access a little bit easier down to the comfort station. So we're proposing a new gate here in the center of the courts. And then again, a similar style set of railroad tie steps down from the existing pickleball courts, tying into the existing walk here. We are proposing drainage to account for the new impervious areas that we're proposing, designed up to the 25-year storm event, and providing equivalent water quality treatment, which is in compliance with the town regulations. So we're before you here based on the expansion of the pickleball courts, the special exception, and then the special permit is required based on the amount of fill, or rather the earthwork, I should say. It's ends up being a net cut job because of the courts being set into the slope here, so there will be material exported from the site, but that's the crux of our application. If there's any questions on the specifics of the design, I'd be happy to answer them.
For Lowenstein and Mr. Calabrese, this is the hill I think that most kids use for sledding, is it not?
That is correct. And that was one of the other reasons why we kept it as tight as we could, so that we'll provide the ability of children to sled almost in the same location that they would have now. We are, you are losing a little bit of a path here, but you do have this whole path down ending at the playground.
Problem is, even your slope shows and people who used it know that when you're going down the hill, forced to go from left to right, going down the hill. And you go all the way down, if it's compacted and if it essentially turns to ice almost, or so, I mean, but it sounds like those paths that I see jutting out cannot be sledded over, correct? That's gonna be what, sidewalk?
They will be asphalt, but if there's snow cover, they are blended into there will be some regrading needed to accommodate the walks themselves, but they will be flush with the grade. So when snow is covering, yes, they could sled over the top of it. There won't be any handrails required because we're not above the adjacent grade. So essentially, these are just regular walks that you could sled over them.
That staircase, is that gonna have curb cuts and all that? I suspect that will, if the kids get over that. That will not be, I guess, that's not appropriate. for
Yeah,
sledding.
the staircases themselves, yes, kids you wouldn't want them sledding over them any different than, any other staircase that you would have there. So, maybe there's some provisions that the Parks and Rec can put up in this winter time that kind of delineates this a little bit better if it's snow covered to add additional safety.
Will there be curb cuts going down? I mean, obviously not when you need to jut out into the park, because you need access to that. But will there be curb cuts going for the staircases going down?
When you say curb cut, you're talking about when we're installing under construction, or where?
I'm sorry, so I'm not, just some kind of raised structure. So if you can, the curb cut was the best analogy I could give.
Will there be a curb or some kind of protrusion above grade, essentially, as you come down the steps? That's what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. For the steps, there will be some, and let me just pull up the detail sheet to give you a little bit better idea of what we're talking about so this is what the steps will look like. And the grade will be feathered along the edge of this. So if you picture that the grade will follow like this. So you will have, to answer your question, you will have a small amount of wood that will be protruding up. The intent are these will be 4x6s or 6x6 pressure treated. So at most you're looking at 6 inches like you would an ordinary curb for a small portion of that.
It seems like we're gonna have to delineate the first few seasons because people may not even notice it if it's snowed over.
Right. Perhaps snow staking like you would the edge of a driveway along the edge, or, this may not be the most aesthetically pleasing, but, some of that orange construction fencing, like you said, maybe for the first season or two, just so that, members of the community are aware that it's there that may not know that, these new stairs have gone in since the last time they were out sledding.
So for either you or Mr. Calabrese, how important or necessary is this new staircase and sidewalk? And I understand ADA compliant. That's what I want to understand is this feature needed for the park or for these 2 new pickleball courts, or is it something that for obvious reasons is good to put in for access? Is it just good for access or is it needed?
I'll take this one. I think the easiest way to put this is it's desired. Is it needed? Not necessarily. I mean, any new construction that we're doing around town with any of our facilities, we want to make ADA compliant and accessible for all. So we're not opposed to having to remodel this if we have to. But obviously we would like to have an ADA compliant walkway from the parking lot for all. I mean, not even just for pickleball, for the playground as well.
Baseball. fields down there.
Right,
could serve that.
exactly.
No,
Exactly.
I understand why it's being requested, it's just, I also know that that's frequently used in the winter time and just foresee potential issues. So that's why I'm raising it.
Yep, understood.
I'm sorry, people behind me. I'll go down the line. So Commissioner Harrison and Francis.
Just to clarify, in the current plan, it's not ADA compliant, right?
The current sidewalks out there,
Yeah.
no, they are not. There are sections that are steeper as you come down here, but the other thing that plays into ADA, and it's not as clearly written in it, is not just the slopes and tolerances, but it's the reasonable access. So right now, for someone that was in a wheelchair to access this, short of rolling, making their way down this hill, they would have to go out to Melville, follow this sidewalk all the way around here, and then make their way back in through here. Again, say we were assuming that all of it is ADA compliant as far as the slope tolerances. I think you'll get into an issue of reasonable access if someone were to really press the issue. We have run into this on past projects with commercial sites as far as where the handicap spaces are being located, and this would fall into a similar category of that. Just to go back to the previous question, with the ADA walks being required, the steps themselves are not necessarily required. I would say they're a convenience. Folks will essentially create a little bit of a goat path down here, I would imagine, if we didn't provide steps to them. Most people are not going to walk back and forth on the walkways, other than if they were someone that was handicapped and needed them by necessity here. But I think the stairs are a nice addition if we can come up with some kind of solution to counteract the safety concerns that the chair raised, rightly so.
So I just want to be clear. So how long would it take me to traverse on that sidewalk that you pointed out? Roughly.
The proposed one or the existing?
The existing.
I couldn't tell you
Offhand.
It's a lengthy walk. It's significantly longer.
She meant proposed.
Oh, sorry, proposed.
What's the distance is what you're
Proposed.
asking?
What's
The distance, please, of the new sidewalk, proposed sidewalk, the zigzag sidewalk?
Roughly, I'd say between 250 and 300 feet. I'd have to get you the exact number, but you're roughly around that. Each ramp is roughly 30 feet long with the landings in there, so you're in the 300 feet ballpark there.
Thanks.
Commissioner Francis?
How did you determine that a 25-year flood system, drainage system? That's a very wet park from what I remember.
Did you hear the question, Mr. Lowenstein?
I think I may have missed it. I heard 25-year and it's an existing.
The question
wet park.
was, why did you use a 25-year rainstorm event? It gets very wet in that area. Did I say it right?
Oh, okay. Gotcha. The 25-year storm event is the town engineering standard for modeling any new impervious area. We obviously, this is grass now, so we're not taking into account any existing impervious area, but that is the town standard for design storms.
It's a very wet park.
She says it's a wet park.
Gotcha. I understand that, but as far as the town design standards go, that is what the town has asked us to design to, and that's what that's what we have designed to. If there's other areas of the park that have drainage issues, perhaps under another project, those can be addressed. What I can say is we did soil testing out here. We did find that there was semi-shallow conditions of groundwater, and we've designed our stormwater to accommodate that, meaning we provided adequate separating distance from where the seasonally high observed groundwater elevation is.
Commissioner Braun?
I have a few questions. trying to situate this on an aerial I'm looking at. So this runs roughly parallel, the length of these courts run roughly parallel to Melville. And where you're zigzagging the switchback trail, that
Correct.
goes up towards the horizontal parking lot, which is perpendicular to Melville, on the other side of those trees, which is how you access one of the ball fields.
Correct, yeah, it's the upper lot, if anybody that's been out to the.
It's up, yeah, I
to
wish
the
that was shown
property,
on
it's
that.
up here.
It's on one of your plans, okay?
The upper lot that he's on right
The
now.
upper lot, okay.
This
And
is
that's
this
off-
is the corner of the upper lot, it's that unpaved kind of little turn
Yeah.
off parking area as you come in.
And so those switchback trails go all the way to the lot? I can't tell from looking at this, but that's how you would access this from the lot, right?
Correct, here, I'll
And
draw in the
the
edge of the
par-
lot for you, so it's a little bit easier to see.
Straight pathway will be paved and have steps for people that don't want to go on the back and forth ones. Will all of them have railings?
The steps and the walks will not require railings because we don't have a grade change of more than 30 inches on either side of it. They're essentially, the walks are set flush with grade. And the steps themselves do not have more than 30 inches of grade change. The grade will follow the steps essentially. So you're at grade basically on both sides. So handrails would not be required here.
And those trees to the left, how much impervious surface are you adding? It doesn't look like it's even as much as what's there on the other half. Okay, the 4 that you have, you're adding 2 and then something in between. Do you know
Right, the
how much-
courts themselves are about 3,600 square feet of new impervious area. Essentially half the size of a tennis court is a good way to picture the size of 2 pickleball courts here. In total, including the patio and the walkways down, you're somewhere in the ballpark of 7,000 square feet of new impervious.
And the drainage, where's the drainage system then? The stormwater drainage system?
The drainage will be located under a portion of the patio and under a portion of the lawn.
And that's, I assume, a basin that holds the water and then releases it slowly?
Correct. It consists of crushed stone and perforated piping.
And what is the level to groundwater and the level to the bottom of the drainage structure?
The bottom of the drainage is 12 inches above the observed seasonal high groundwater elevation. You want to know the exact elevation of it, or just?
I've just heard, I'm not a stormwater person, but I think I've heard in other meetings that it should be more than that. The difference between the groundwater and the bottom of the drainage structure.
12 inches is the standard. Is the
12 is?
industry standard and the requirement for the town of Fairfield.
Does it percolate? What happens if it gets overfilled? It just overflows and flows down the hill?
We have a proposed, and let me pull up the drainage plan, it'll be easier to describe it this way.
Is this above, like, how, there are, well, there are houses nearby, I guess, on that side of
So
North.
we're controlling the runoff to be at or below the existing. That's the requirement of the town. So we couldn't move forward to build this if we weren't at the very least meeting that requirement, which we do. So the water that runs off of the court and the patio that are detained will go into the stone reservoir. And then when that's filled up, there's a level spreader that's being proposed, which from the surface will look like a gravel band. It's essentially 12 to 18 inches wide, usually about 24 inches deep. And when the water rises up, it can overflow to the surface. But what the level spreader does is that it dissipates the flow so that it mimics overland flow, meaning if there was normal rain on grass, the depth of the runoff over the grass, once the ground is fully saturated, that's what you're getting as it comes out of level spreader. The sizing, the length of it is dictated by that.
Are you, obviously pickleball courts cannot be pervious pavers, I guess, but can any
Correct.
portion of the patio or any portion of the walkway be pervious?
So the patio, part of it has stone underneath of it already, and we're capturing it with a trench drain that runs the width of the court. So the whole patio itself will be captured, and we provided stone underneath of it to the extent that we can. Portions of the patio is in an area of cut, so we're limited on how much storage we can propose there. So that's why we've compensated for the storage outside of the patio into the lawn area. So there'll be some regrading that will allow for the additional stormwater there. Making them pervious doesn't change the number one way or another because we're already capturing all of the patio.
In other words, you're building the patio on top of an impervious surface that's already there? Is that what I heard you say?
No, the patio is being built on top of portions of the proposed drainage, which is crushed stone with perforated piping in it.
And why wouldn't pervious help or be considered for the patio?
Well,
I know you
the
can't.
purpose of a pervious patio is to allow water to penetrate through a patio that ordinarily would be
I see.
impervious and get into the drainage. In our case, in lieu of allowing the water to go straight through the patio, we're pitching the patio to a drain and then the drain connects into the stone underneath. It's just a different methodology of how you get the water where you want it to be.
And what's the landscaping? Are you eliminating trees? And if so, are you replacing them?
We are not proposing any tree removal with this project. We're working all within existing lawn areas on the site.
And would you consider adding native plantings? Just as part
I
of
think that would be a question for Anthony. This is a town project, so it would be at the purview of the town.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Bukowski.
It's okay, thank you.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. So this is actually my neighborhood, and this is the park that I spend a lot of time with my children, and I'm very nervous that this proposal puts more of a focus on the adults' needs as opposed to the children's needs in our neighborhood. One, for the sledding, it's a major sledding concern regardless of whether or not there are stairs there. And two, the playground, while it's a beautiful new playground, I have a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And my 2-year-old does not, as opposed to other parks in town, this park does not necessarily cater to her age group. So I would love for the commission and for the town to consider something that's more aligned with our children's needs. And so that actually brings me to my next question. Why are we proposing for more pickleball courts at this location? And are there other locations around town where there are currently pickleball courts, or are we looking at other spots around town to put pickleball courts in?
Thank you for the question. This was all addressed in our master plan over the past 2 years. There are several other locations that the plan is calling for additional pickleball courts, dog parks, outdoor classrooms, new playgrounds, all kinds of stuff. Over 10,000 people participated in the process. This is where the Parks and Rec Commission decided to add the first set of brand new pickleball courts because it's already a pickleball court destination with the 4. Adding the extra 2 here gives 6 for additional play. So that's why the pickleball community was driving, where they wanted to see pickleball, and the 61,000 residents in town gave their opinions as well. So again, this was a long process. This wasn't just overnight, Parks and Rec saying, hey, let's just do this here. I mean, there's been input from many, many stakeholders. And this is where we are at the moment. So I look forward to putting in additional amenities at Tunxus Hill, Lincoln Park, Melville Park, pretty much anything on this side of town. There's lots of opportunities for recreational activities.
So were there options as far as like what would be put into this park as far as whether it be pickleball or is it that the pickleball community is asking for additional courts?
For this park specifically, the master plan called for pickleball courts here. I did not call for, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, a gaga pit or a toddler playground. That wasn't proposed for this site.
And so can, just clarification around, like, how does that get proposed for a specific site?
It goes through the Parks and Rec Commission. And again, this was all hammered out through the 2-year process of our master plan, which can be found on our brand new website, fairfieldrecreation.com, under master plan. It's one of the first buttons on there. And you can see all the 15 proposals of concept ideas that were proposed, Tungus Hill Park being one of them. And then you can go into the almost, 900-page document that goes into the rest of our facilities. There's over 60 something parks that we have. So it's a very robust system, but there's lots to digest in there.
Mr. Calabrese, though, let me ask this. The pickleball courts are one thing. Did your master plan address the sidewalks going down and the staircase going down?
The concept plan did call for ADA compliant sidewalks. Maybe not in this design, but again, knowing that sledding is a very popular activity at this park, that's why it was taken into consideration to try to keep this ADA compliant sidewalk as tight to the pickleball courts as possible. I'm not.
Well, that's fine. I understand the idea, though, that you wanted to have more pickleball courts in the area. I mean, I see them. New ones look great. I see that they're being used. I understand the idea that you want to have ADA compliant down to that area. I just wanted to see whether like this concept of ADA compliant sidewalks or the traversing area was in in the hill itself, or if it was just we need ADA compliance access, that's to be determined, and then we want the pickleball courts.
It was a slightly different design. Again, it was a concept, so when you get into the actual design on what's physically possible, different than a concept. But one of the overall arching
What was the concept? So I just want to understand, like,
the concept ran. A concept. I don't have it in front of me, but the concept ran a sidewalk directly through, almost in a Y formation, down that hill. So it would not have been any more conducive than this one is. But it was picking up.
Mr. Lowenstein, do you know what that concept is? Can you just show us what that was?
I'm looking for it right now. Just bear with me, everyone. I'm gonna see if I have the original one here.
Commissioner Pekowski.
Okay, well, to your point, I wanted to add on, that was my next question, because parking is a nightmare here. And I just, to the chairman's point, I'm wondering, in thinking about the ADA compliance, why is it that we didn't come from the bottom lot? Because I know that is a much more gradual hill if you walk in between the wooded area and then the baseball field and where the bathrooms are. Why is it that we're not creating a sidewalk or a stairwell there, as opposed to coming from the steepest part from the top parking lot, where you have a very steep hill to get down to the pickleball courts?
There's quite a bit of clearing that would be required. It's not as easy of an access. I understand there is more slope coming from the upper parking lot, but getting, there would be additional trees that would need to be taken down. It's not quite as simple of an access through there, although I do recognize it is a little more conducive slope-wise, as well as
also safety-wise for the kids, because you know that there will still be sledding. And I see this being a major danger for the kids sledding, because it will still happen. So even if we were
so, I don't know if I necessarily agree with you that this is a major safety issue for the sledding. I think there still can be plenty of sledding, similar use of this as it is now. I think there's some safety things that we could implement into the plan to provide another level of safety to this, but I don't see the walkways presenting a safety issue when they're snow covered for sledding. And like I said, for the steps, I think there's measures that can be put into effect that can counteract that. Completely scrapping the design and trying to work back from the other side in an area that's not developed in between there, I just think I don't think it works for the overall usage of the site. I certainly can appreciate your position from, the safety for the sledding side, but I think the happy medium here is kind of what we're suggesting for this site.
I definitely respect your opinion. Obviously, you're the professional here. I know exactly where my kids sled, and it is right over those stairs and into, that's the exact path that they take. And they land right where those new pickleball courts will be. And no, I mean, it's a park I'm super familiar with. So, but again, you are the professional. I would love for the commission and for the team to consider looking at alternate routes as far as plugging in the ADA compliance piece, because I definitely, I mean, it's a place that I spend a lot of time at, and I do know what actually the reality of what happens with the kids.
Thank you. Kurt, did you pull that up? Because I have it. I just don't know if I can share my screen, but if I can, I can do it.
I do. I think this is it.
It's page 14 of 16 on that concept, on the concept plans off the website, if you have that.
Why don't you bring it up, Anthony? Make sure that I've got the right one. Let me stop sharing my screen here.
See if I know how to do this. All right. Hopefully that worked.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so this was the concept plan that was proposed in our master plan, and can you guys see my mouse here?
We can.
Okay, so this is that upper parking lot, which it's being called to be repaved and restriped, which will add shade trees per town regulations. This will obviously help clear up a lot of the parking issues that this site is seeing currently, whether it's Little League or pickleball. But then you can see the sidewalk that was, again, in the concept, basically was starting in the exact same spot that you were seeing on our design, except this one was bringing it out into the middle of the park, connecting to the current sidewalk along Melville, and then coming down to the pickleball area, and then again back over to the playground and up and connecting again to the existing. So just a slightly different design, but again, this was a concept at the time. And like we said, when you start putting things into play on real maps and grades and trying to make things ADA compliant, reality is not always what the concept is. So, but I think for the most part, we pretty much stay close to it.
Plant the trees though, right? The trees are kind of like just concept at that point, right?
Well, again, this here is the hill and the existing trees. Again, this is not drawn to scale, obviously.
No, of course, that's what I was.
Yeah, but there is this is all rock and ledge and everything. And again, the idea is to tuck these along that. So,
but there is a sidewalk on that side of Melville stretching down from the parking lot up, down the hill to an access point that's on the bottom currently.
That's correct. And one of the things that I had asked was, can we just connect to that?
Yes.
It's just not ADA compliant. I think Kurt could speak to that. I think he might have mentioned that earlier, but that was.
I'm sorry. Was there a question?
Yeah, that's what it came down to. I mean, Anthony can tell you, we ran through many different iterations of this, and the reason we came to this was because we were cognizant of the sledding issue, or I shouldn't say issue, but the usage of this as a sledding site for children. And to provide all the necessary things for the town for this project, and complying with ADA, this was the best solution that we felt while still allowing for the maximum amount of lawn there. If you stretch the walk further around, you're just creating a larger area that's occupied by that walkway and the grading needed. To just run it straight down, it just doesn't work to be compliant with ADA.
Commissioner Harrison, then Braun.
I had a question about parking. If you're adding additional courts, does that mean you're gonna be adding additional parking? Can you walk me through the parking plan?
There's nothing. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Anthony.
sorry, Kurt, go ahead.
I mean, adding 2 new courts, I would say, is a minimal addition. As far as demand goes, I know in the future master plan there is, as Anthony touched on, there's provisions to reconfigure this parking lot, which would provide additional parking. At this time, part of this project, we're not proposing any new parking, but like I said, for 2 additional pickleball courts, I don't feel that that's something that is adding a substantial amount of new traffic here. You're talking about 4 people playing at one time, which could be.
They do doubles? They don't play doubles in pickleball? They do.
Sure. 8, so sure, yeah, you could have as much. You're right, as much as 8
How many
people
parking
here.
spaces are there now?
Say that again.
How many parking spaces are there currently?
I don't know that offhand. I would get back to you on that one.
Yeah, but if we could find out, it'd be great. Cause 8 to me is 8 more cars would be substantial.
Commissioner Braun, then Pikowski.
I'm trying to compare this to the aerial and just seems like it's not a straight line that goes to the parking lot unless you cut the trees down. Doesn't curve around, it's a straight pathway from, you're not cutting any trees down. It's just straight through on the edge of where the trees are.
Well, going off the aerial, there's distortions from the tree canopies. The existing conditions we have is recently surveyed. So based on that, we are not proposing any trees to come down.
Is there a possibility of adding trees just because of the wetness of the property and how trees are increasingly being used to absorb and prevent erosion and absorb stormwater? Is there a possibility of adding trees?
I would, I would have to defer to Anthony and the town about that. This is a town project. If they would like to add trees, we can certainly add them to the plan. We're not proposing any new ones currently. But, that's all I can say on that. Anthony, if you want to add anything to that.
I think the middle of this hill looks pretty good for a tree line. I wasn't really sure, but no, I'm kidding. I joke. I know sledding. I'm happy to add trees where they make sense if need be. But currently we weren't planning on adding any trees as Kurt said, we weren't planning on taking any out either.
And so there's this parking lot above, there's another parking lot below that seems smaller. That's on Nordstrom. Both of them would access the pickleball courts?
Both service the park currently.
It could, yes.
Both of them. And we don't know how many spaces altogether. Is that the total parking? Because I see one over by Aldi's, but that's not part of this area, is it?
No.
Access. Okay.
No, there's no access through there, right?
So these are the 2 sole parking areas unless someone parks on the road, I guess, right? And
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And when there's Little League going on, you'll see people parked up and down Melville Avenue regularly.
And Nordstrom also probably. Sometimes.
Most people don't like to walk, is my experience.
How's the lighting? Is there any additional lighting here? Is it following the dark skies requirements?
There's no lighting proposed here. This will only, it's similar to how the pickleball courts operate now. It'll work during the daytime and, folks can get out there in the low light. That's okay too, but there's no new lights proposed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pikowski.
So as Mr. Calabrese said, the parking issue is real as far as, especially when there are games there. So to answer your question, Commissioner Harrison, the parking is really pretty treacherous and it makes it a very dangerous walk when you're going up Melville. So the parking is also a concern of mine, but can we display the aerial again? Because I'm wondering if we consider taking a look, and when you say you don't wanna take down additional trees, I understand that, but I'm just wondering, is it a cost issue? Because the distance from what I understand from the bottom parking lot to the pickleball courts themselves would be a shorter distance than if you were to go from the top parking lot down to the pickleball courts. And so just, if you could just walk me through, other than you had said you didn't want to take down, there were a couple of trees. From what I know, that there is a walkway or there's a place where you can walk next to the wooded area, between the wooded area, and you can see that strip right there, but not this aerial, the other aerial actually that you had up before with the sidewalk.
The concept plan?
Yes, please.
Okay, Anthony will have to bring that one up for you.
All right, thank you.
So again, to reiterate on this one, this is a concept plan and not drawn to scale.
Right, I understand that, but the concept is how I understand it to be, which is there is that natural walkway, so I'm just wondering, like, if we would
This
consider.
walkway here?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
that
actually how we walk. We walk over from
Yep.
Villa and we go up there, and that's how we access the parking, the playground. We actually never go, or we try to avoid going up top because that's a much easier walk. So I'm just wondering, like, the slope is definitely a better slope for ADA. The distance is a much better distance.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it currently is not ADA compliant. If you were to go that way, walk up that way, I recognize that you can get there. But we need to provide ADA access to this.
And I agree with
to
that.
this area, but to rip out all of the existing walkways there, reconfigure them to be ADA, that could happen, but then the upper lot has no access. As I've observed, I live in the neighborhood as well, and I've gone to the park during busy hours, and what people do is they walk down, frequently they walk down from the upper lot across the lawn, and you can see that there's a little bit of a path that's been kind of worn into the grass. So there's already access from the lower parking lot, as you said. It isn't ADA compliant, but correct. But we have no access from the upper lot. So this is providing two things, not just ADA compliance, but it's also providing safe access from the top of the upper lot down to the pickleball courts, because people that park there
going down the sidewalk. So both of them have access. It's just that neither of them are ADA compliant. So the sidewalk, but actually there's not actually like a paved pathway, is there, from the lower lot? You wouldn't be ripping anything up, is what I'm saying. You had said that you would be rip up sidewalks going from the lower lot, but there isn't anything.
I'm talking about between the existing courts and the ball field, the sidewalks that are going down from the comfort station. That area is fairly steep as well, so that will need to be regraded to allow that to be ADA compliant. There may be additional retaining walls needed because we don't have as much free area over there. I mean, to your point, yes, it's an area that could be looked at. I don't know that you're going to get the answer that you want in eliminating all of the activity up on the slope there. I think we still need to provide access down from the upper lot. I mean, Anthony can speak to that better than I can from a town perspective, but walking all the way out on Melville, all the way around and down, folks are just frankly not going to do that. They don't do that now. There should be some kind of access from the upper lot, convenient access for people that choose to park up there, which is, I agree with the concept that they went with here and why we have kind of moved forward with that to the design level with the plan that we have here before you.
Is there a concern from the town that if we're not ADA compliant, that, and I say this, I think we should probably need to reach out to the town attorney about this too. But are we concerned, or are you concerned that not being ADA compliant will impair the town in some way, open us up to liability to a discrimination claim?
It potentially could. I mean, I would agree. I'd rather have the town attorney opine on that than me, but.
Well, but I wanna get your vantage point.
Well, you know, when you're designing projects, especially new projects, we should try to be as inclusive as possible. And that means being ADA compliant.
Questions from the commission?
Mr. Calabrese, are there complaints that Parks and Rec has received from residents, neighbors about existing pickleball activities of the courts in terms of the parking, noise, other sort of secondary effects of pickleball?
I would not say directly associated with pickleball, but we do get regular complaints, as one of the commissioners mentioned, about parking, you know, at this park in Melville and Nordstrom regularly. But again, it's not just Tunxus Hill Park. I get these types of complaints from all different parks, all across town. So it's not just this one park. As far as the pickleball goes, no, it's not typically complaints about pickleball per se. Do I get pickleball complaints? Yes, they're not typically from Tunxus Hill though.
What kind of complaints?
Again, parking. Tomlinson Middle School is one of the biggest ones right now that I get a lot of complaints because they're heavily used by pickleball players. And there's a 2-hour parking limit on that street. They're right next to the train station, so you know we've got 2-hour parking there, so commuters aren't parking and walking through the school to get down to the train station. You can only park on one side of the street there. Sometimes the pickleballers will park on both sides of the street, so we get complaints about that. Sometimes we get complaints that there's people playing pickleball at 8 a.m. On a weekend, and people don't like that. But yeah, again, different locations have unique challenges.
Got it. And in terms of parking, so there is restriping on Tunxus Hill upper parking lot as part of the master plan, but that's in a later phase of it.
We're trying to get that done this fall, regardless of this phase of pickleball happening. The temporary salt shed that was always used up there had been relocated by DPW recently, so that's going to free up a ton of, I don't want to say a ton of space, but probably 10 to 12 parking spaces right there. And anybody that's familiar with Tunxus Hill Park knows the fact that lot is not striped. People do just park wherever they want. So I think once we have stripes there, that will dictate where people are parking, and it will be more orderly.
That was my next question, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Braun?
Will there be rules, or are there rules in our parks about skateboarding? This looks like a very attractive hill with steps on it to go skateboarding on. How would that be managed?
It's a great question. Another sign, we could absolutely put up another sign. Typically, I did not think of putting a sign at the stairs, but it does make sense. We don't typically see people, these courts are so heavily used, we don't normally see scooters and skateboarders in this park. It's just not somewhere we see them. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, with the new sidewalk, but.
Yeah, sidewalk seems like an attractive thing for skateboarders. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Are there parking regulations that go with this? Or are they just town exempt?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What are the parking regulations for adding pickleball, or is the town exempt, Mr. Webb?
Jim went for the record, we don't have a specific standard for park. There's not a ratio of X number of spaces per tennis court or basketball court or baseball field.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Calabrese, Mr. Lowenstein? Anything further, gentlemen?
No, I thank you guys for your time. As a former commissioner, I know how these meetings go, and I thank you guys all for volunteering your time for this. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Stick around because I don't know who else is here, but that ends the initial presentation of this application. Is there anybody in person that wishes to be heard on this application? Seeing no's. Is there anybody that's joining us remotely that wishes to be heard on this application?
We have Dr. Max Albanese, and then I believe Emanuela would like to also speak.
Dr. Albanese? Dr. Albanese? He's on mute. You're on mute if you're speaking. I cannot hear you. I see that you chatted in. You're coming in, you're calling in. Okay, you're muted. So if you can unmute yourself on your laptop or computer, that would be the way to do it. Oh, feel free to call in as well. Okay. Was that the comment I saw about we possibly go first, Ms. Harrigan?
Yes.
Okay. What's the comment I saw was law school related?
He's in a law school class right now.
Now?
Yeah.
Oh,
Should be.
Should I approve this?
Maybe we could hear from Emanuela.
I was thinking that, but doesn't get out in the next 30 seconds. I think
I'm ready, so.
Yeah, I know, and I will jump
If
to you
doc-
in a second.
If
because-
Dr. Albanese doesn't make it, I'm here.
Thank you. I know, I jumped. Manuela, why don't you go first? If he jumps on, no, I can't, Dr. Albanese, I can't hear you. If you're on the phone, press *6 to unmute yourself. Is he joining in on the phone, Ms. Harrigan?
Not generally.
All right, you know, Manuela, why don't you go, if you don't mind, if he jumps on, I may switch to him.
Absolutely.
Whatever reason. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for this meeting. I am on Nordstrand Avenue, and I'm speaking on behalf of my neighbors, some of whom are next to me and also across the road right next to the parking area. Additionally, as I'm sure many of you know, there is a flooding situation that's going on in this area. And so we've been very interested in this project from 2 points. What is going to happen with regards to the lower parking area if there's an increase? We've already seen an increase in parking in this lower lot, with the result that the town doesn't want to close it off at night, with the result that we have a lot of activity at midnight all the way through to dawn. Kids coming in there, loud music, exchanges of who knows what. That's our one question. The second question with regards to the flooding is, it is a very wet area up there where the new courts are proposed to be. If there's to be a catchment area and the water is to run off, where is it going to run off to? And how will you or can you guarantee that it's not going to impact us. One of the houses abuts the courts right now, and he is very concerned. The resident there is very concerned about this whole situation. Thank you.
Ms. Harrison, Commissioner Harrison, excuse me.
Manuela, sorry, I don't know your last name. Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
Can you tell me do a lot of residents park on the street right now?
There are some residents who park on the street, but those who have driveways do use their driveways.
So you wouldn't say there's an excess amount of cars parked there overnight or during the day?
No, no. It's not overcrowded or anything. It actually, you know what, towards Melville, there's one house that seems to have quite a few, but then going in towards Nordstrand, no, it's not an overabundance of cars on the road.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anything further?
No further questions.
All set from us, Manuela. Are you all set?
Yeah, but would you be able to answer the question?
I will ask the applicant of the questions because the way public asks questions to the applicant through us.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Albanese? Can you go back to that view you had a second ago, Ms. Harrigan?
He did add his video and he looks like he's.
Dr. Albanese, we can't hear you. I saw that you had unmuted yourself and then remuted yourself. Please check and make sure you're unmuted.
Excuse me, perhaps he could type in his questions since he seems to be having audio issues.
That might end up being the case.
He looks unmuted now if he wants to try to speak.
Dr. Albanese, do you hear us? Dr. Albanese, can you type in whether you can write your questions or your concerns in the chat? Can you go back, Ms. Harrigan, to that other view where I could see him?
Oh, he's asking.
Right, so I will read it. Oh, can you put that back up for me, Ms. Harrigan?
Yeah.
Where Dr. Albanese I'll read it into the record.
Just scroll up.
Yes, thank you. I am writing on behalf of the residents residing on Melville Ave along and adjacent to Tunxus Hill. This is from Dr. Albanese. The residents in whole object to the building of additional pickleball courts as described in the special exception, special permit application of the town pertaining to the construction of 2 new pickleball courts at Tunxus Hill Park as shown on plans entitled Site Improvements for Proposed Pickleball Courts dated August 15, 2023 and prepared. The current pickleball courts are a nuisance to the residents residing between Second
Can you hear me
Street-
now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm so sorry about that. Severe technical difficulties.
Do you wish me to continue reading your comment or do you want to jump in?
If you would, sir. And then there
Right,
were
the current pickleball courts
that
are a nuisance to the
asking about.
residents residing between Second Street and Third Street with the sound of balls and people jeering echoing off of homes and through our windows beginning as early as 6 a.m. and as late as 9 p.m. 7 days a week. In addition to this, and despite the town graciously erecting no parking signs, many individuals using the pickleball courts still park on the roadway obstructing traffic. Any additional pickleball courts will only degrade the current situation. The solution to this problem would be to erect sound barrier walls around the courts, add additional parking to the auxiliary lot on Nordstrom Avenue, and enforce mandatory playing time not to begin before 9 a.m. on weekdays, 10 a.m. on weekends, and not to continue later than sundown on all days. In addition, stricter parking enforcement would be welcomed. What was yours?
Well, I thank you to the commission for allowing me a moment to speak on behalf of all the residents. There's about 10 of us that all live directly across the street from the park. We were not aware of this plan for pickleball courts up until 4 days ago when we received a letter from the town. We all strongly oppose it because of not just the parking situation, but the noise that is generated from the players is very troublesome. After hearing Mr. Calabrese's plan for the park with the building plans for ADA compliant sidewalks, there's an even greater concern because not only is this going to aesthetically deteriorate the park, which will affect potentially the value of our residences, but it's going to affect literally thousands of children, not just from Fairfield, but surrounding towns that come specifically to this park to sled. It's going to create a safety hazard. Great for ADA compliance to help individuals in wheelchairs get to pickleball courts, but the children that come to this park year after year, decade after decade, are going to be compromised. The fun that they have, a 30-foot extension of a slanted ramp into the hill is going to compromise for it to be used. If anyone that has seen this park in the winter, you'll have upwards of 200 children on the hill at any given time. And there was a question earlier as to how far or how long it would take to walk down the sidewalk that is pre-existing on Melville to the one that transitions across to the pickleball courts. That's about a 5 to 8 minute walk. I can't think of anything else that would be that the neighborhood would want to address. But these are going to be the two big things. I mean, when they find out about this plan for sidewalks, they're going to be very upset. And I would implore, on behalf of all of the residents on Melville, implore the commission to at least put in some type of sound barrier, whether it be coniferous trees that line the entire length of Melville down from the existing parking lot to where the sidewalk transitions across, or some type of structure. But there has to be other considerations here, not just for the residents, but for thousands of families that utilize this park in the winter. Thank you for your time.
Kathy's got a question.
Commissioner Braun.
I have a question. I've never seen the sledding at that park. Are you able to tell from what the plan looked like for the sidewalk and the zigzag structure, how much of the sledding portion would be impacted? I'm asking that to you, Mr.
Listen,
I was able to assess it when I was looking at it, and if it's 30 feet, that's probably half to 60% of the distance from where the children begin their sledding. So it's completely compromised.
It's 30 feet long, but the width, is it like?
I could tell you, and Commissioner Kapowski could probably tell you as well. It's impacting. They're gonna go over it. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I think even. So I mean, I think even Mr. Calabrese would acknowledge that too, but I'll leave that to him. But I mean.
Like a third, a quarter of the sledding slope?
At least.
Yeah, I'd say at least a third. That's just looking at what they've given us.
That's significant. I thought it might be on the edge and it didn't affect it that much.
Well, we can go over an executive session, but I mean, I can tell you that much. Anything further, Dr. Albanese?
Sorry, I was unmuting myself. I just want to thank the commission for their time and the township for their consideration. And I think hearing that this is a planned build that was initiated over 2 years ago, we're going to be hard pressed to be opposite to the courts being built. So I would ask Mr. Calabrese to consider putting in those tall coniferous trees that just line Melville, go from the parking lot all the way down to the sidewalk. If that's something that can be done, I'll get all the neighborhood to buy into it. It seems like in our neighborhood gatherings, they kind of come to me to initiate some of these talks, and I think that would be a very easy compromise if the township would be willing to do it. I'd be happy to follow you during the week.
One last question from Commissioner Pikowski.
Sorry, I'm sorry for so many questions, but I just had a question, and I don't know, Chairman, can I direct it to Dr. Albanese about something he said, or should I ask you?
Go ahead, ask him.
Okay, just around, you said that you were notified around 4 days about, I know that this plan was constructed 2 years ago.
It was October 6th, we received the first letter.
And that was the first time that you received the letter regarding the additional pickleball courts?
Or from this application?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, from, you're talking about
additional
notice you
pickle.
received
I've
about
not
this
received any. So just to clarify my comment, personally have not received any notices regarding construction to this park. The only notice that I've received was the one dated October 6th. There were actually 2 dates on it. One was like September 23rd, but I received this one within the week, this same week, stating that there's a special permit request for the addition of the 2 courts.
And I only ask that because I do know across the country there are issues popping up around litigation with pickleball noise, which is why I didn't know as far as public hearings concerned. Just trying to understand when the residents were notified.
Commissioner Harrison?
The noise is significant.
I was just gonna ask about the noise as well, because I've read too that there are a lot of issues with the noise as pickleball is, we know it's popular, and it can go up to what, like 70 decibels or something like that. How would this impact noise and your quality of life?
I apologize, I was unmuting. For myself and for my neighbors on either side of me, we leave our windows open upstairs often, and on weekends, we are awakened by the clicking and clacking of these balls and the players, cheering each other on. It's pretty loud, and if you could think, somebody that's like myself, I work in excess of 40 to 50 hours a week. I'm also attending 3 days a week at law school. The weekends are utilized to kind of try to rest a little bit. 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m. On a Sunday morning, hearing this, it really is a great disturbance. It wakes up my entire family. And I know I can speak for my neighbor next door. It wakes up her family as well.
Thank you.
Chair Emanuela.
Thank you.
Emmanuel, I think I saw that you wanted to follow up quickly on your earlier commentary or testimony, excuse me, is a better word. Manuela? She's still there? We can't hear you, so please double check and see if you're muted.
I have a question for Dr. Albanese if he's still there.
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay.
Yes, sir, I am.
Why would a doctor want to become a lawyer? That's not my question.
Every lawyer I know
My real
asks
question,
that.
my real question is, I don't know, where do you live? You're in the Nordstrom area. I don't see how
No.
trees could be planted.
I'm not.
Oh, well, the
I'm not
people you're
speaking about the
talking,
Nordstrom area.
oh, you're talking about Melville? I don't
I
know how
live
trees
across
can be
the street from
planted.
the park in the yellow house.
Yeah, I'm looking at an area like where Second Street is, there's a couple of houses on the corner. I don't see many going up Melville. I'm trying to figure out where the houses are
No,
and where
they're-
tree, yeah.
So if you start at Second Street, there's 4 homes that line we'll call it northbound side of the street. That is, there's like a white house with a white fence. Then there's, Bridget, she lives next door to me. Then there's my house, which is the yellow one.
Right?
Then there's the
between
White
first
House.
and So
Yeah,
the thing is,
between second and third. I'm
Oh.
specifically talking between Second and Third Street.
I could see some trees being planted on that stretch between second and third, but between first and second, those look like private residences, and I don't think that could
Right.
be forced
No,
right down there.
I'm not discussing that part, no.
Okay, thank
I
you.
would say from about Second Street up Melville to where the parking lot is, where the sand barracks was formerly positioned. So from that parking lot all the way down Melville
Okay, thank you.
on the park side. Yes, ma'am.
Manuela, are you there? All right, I mean, why don't we do this? Let me ask, is there any other member of the public that wishes to be heard on this application? Nobody in our room. Is anybody else joining remotely that wishes to be heard? Going once, twice. If Emanuela comes back on, I'll let her talk, but why don't we move on to rebuttal? I'll close the public hearing portion, subject to Emanuela rejoining us. Oh. I thought I heard her, but nope, okay. Mr. Calabrese.
I can only address really Dr. Albanese's concerns with the trees, and I'm totally amenable to that. The former owner of the yellow house that Mr. Albanese lives in now, when we put these courts in back in 2014, was one of my usual people that I was in touch with every week. So I do understand that, and her concern was very similar. I think trees would help buffer that sound. It's not going to diminish it completely, that's for sure. But it would help deter it for what it's worth. And I am open to that. So,
Is that something you'd be okay with a condition of approval or a recommendation? Is that something
we can do that. But again, I won't say something that I don't mean. So, Mr. Albanese does have my word. If this does pass, we'll put trees in. But you can make it a condition if you'd like.
I think you need a question.
Commissioner
One-
Bukowski.
yeah, I guess-
No, rebuttal's fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think this is more of a question for the commission. I don't know if like a sound or an acoustician, as far as like the sound is concerned, if we could get a sound study, if that's something we would want to consider in thinking about additional courts. But it sounds like Mr. Calabrese with the trees. I just know that the cases that I did read about, it was about like the intermittent or unexpected sounds, or there not being consistency in the sound, kind of similar to what we were talking about with on the spot.
I mean, I don't think the commission, we see this with traffic reports, with getting independent traffic reports. We have the funding for that, or even probably I'm not even sure we have a regulatory basis for it.
That makes sense.
I see Emanuela. Can you speak again, Emanuela? Do you mind if I jump back to her, please?
Yes, thank you so much. Technology, I got thrown right off and then couldn't get back on again. I just wanted to confirm Dr. Albanese saying about the noise. I live on Nordstrand. I have Nordstrand between me and houses and the woods, and I still hear the pickleball courts and the people in the mornings, especially if the wind is blowing the right way. And then I also wanted to confirm, because I have checked with my neighbors here. I was away last week, and so I received a note when I got back, but one of my neighbors took a picture of it and sent it to me last week and said, "What is this all about?" And a few other neighbors chimed in and didn't know. So this is new to us as well. Thank you, and apologies about that technology.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
I will close officially the public comment portion and go back to rebuttal. I forget where we were, Mr. Calabrese or Mr. Lowenstein, but
I'll jump in. I think, sorry, go ahead, Anthony.
No, I was passing it back to you. Go for it.
Yeah, I think Anthony hit on the noise concern of Mr. Albanese. The other item that I wrote down here was from Emanuela regarding the runoff. The reason that we're installing the proposed drainage is to mitigate the additional runoff that would be generated by the proposed impervious areas, so that it's at the existing condition or reduced. We're meeting that mandate. So from an overall drainage perspective on this property, the runoff that leaves the site does not change. The discharge end of the system does not discharge directly at any property line or at any private residence. As in larger storms, as this overflows, it will flow towards the lower field there, the ball field. But there's no runoff that would be directed towards a neighbor. So if there are any existing drainage issues or neighbors that are affected by some portion of the park, this particular project is not affecting or will not be exacerbating any of that issues. Because again, like I said, our mandate is to design stormwater systems that will control as if it's the existing conditions that is there today. If there's anything else that I missed as far as neighbor issues, if you, Mr. Chairman, if you wrote any down that I missed, but I think those are kind of the two principal concerns that I
Commissioner
have.
Francis, go ahead.
I do find it concerning that we got emails about parking signs, the no parking signs not being followed, and the police apparently declining to come and enforce them. I'm sure the neighbors find that very upsetting. I just wanted it on the record. When we consider.
Commissioner Brayman?
Thank you. So, I guess for Mr. Calabrese or Mr. Lowenstein, is there an opportunity for screening with vegetation like trees on the Nordstrand side, as well as between 2nd and 3rd Streets?
I don't think that would help. Based on just the location of where the courts are, we would have to, the only spot we'd be able to put trees would be in the outfield of the baseball field, which again aren't really going to help. As I apologize, as Emanuela said, she's already has the rocks and the trees and everything between Nordstrom and her property. So I'm just, could we put trees out there? I'm sure we could, but I don't think that they would actually help.
Okay, and what's your opinion of the effectiveness of screening with evergreens for noise purposes for the pickleball courts? I know that different communities have experimented with that.
Yeah, again, I think to my point earlier, on Melville Ave, I think it will help a little bit. It's not going to be the end all solution here. We've tried asking the pickleball players. Again, we've had these courts, the 4 courts there since 2014. We were one of the first communities in Connecticut to put them in. And we asked the pickleballers at that time to use softer paddles rather than the hard plastic or hard wooden paddles. And they did for a little while, and it helped a little bit. We put up large windscreens. Those fences there are, I believe they're just about 10 feet tall. We put in different types of windscreens on those to try to help deaden the sound. Didn't necessarily work the way we wanted it to work. So again, I know somebody pointed out, one of the commissioners pointed out that this is, the noise has been an issue throughout the country. This is not something that's unique to Fairfield. Obviously, putting 2 additional courts there, has potential to increase the noise. But again, I'm happy to work with some type of screening to help diminish that sound.
Great. And my last question is, are there current hours of operation for the pickleball courts? And if not, what do you consider to be a reasonable set of hours?
Right. So currently, we don't issue permits prior to 9 a.m., whether it's a field or a court, and we don't issue anything after dark. So the rules of parks in general are they're open from sunrise to sunset. So theoretically, if somebody was in there playing pickleball at 7 a.m., they don't have a permit, so they're not permitted to be there. They would be subject to a noise ordinance. If somebody were to call the police could come out, and if there's reasonable suspicion that they're whatever activity they're doing, if they're yelling and screaming or being a disturbance in that aspect, the police may take action. But if they're just playing pickleball, chances are they're not going to do much. And again, I can't really speak for the police, but that's how I would anticipate that.
And since you don't issue permits before 9 a.m. on any day of the week or after sundown, would that be a reasonable condition of approval? Since we do have hours of operation, sometimes it's conditions of approval and special permits.
Well, you could make it a condition, but again, it would have to be enforced by the PD. We don't have park rangers that go around to kick people out of parks, nor would I want to kick people out of parks. I mean, if somebody's in there doing yoga, obviously they're not creating a nuisance. So yeah, I mean, you can make it a condition. I just don't know how it would be enforced.
Commissioner Braun? I'm sorry, Harrison, sorry.
I have a question for Mr. Calabrese, and maybe this is a silly question, but it sounds like it's not really attainable to really pursue any kind of enforcement with the timing, but have you guys ever thought about maybe putting locks on the court and opening them up at the appropriate time, or is that just completely unreasonable and not doable?
It would be a huge ask. We don't have the staffing to do that. We can't, honestly, to be candid with you, we can't even lock and open up 5 beaches along the Long Island Sound on a regular basis. So to go around and unlock 36 pickleball courts or 31 tennis courts, it's unmanageable for sure.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Final questions for the applicant? Anything final from you, Mr. Calabrese, Mr. Lowenstein?
No, thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I'll close the hearing on this matter. Next item, 3 Unquote Place, special permit application of Jocko Enterprises LLC pertaining to 3rd floor dormer additions and conversion of upper floors to a single residential apartment in the Center Design Business District.
It's Camille Giacomaza, and she's on the phone.
I'm on the webinar. I was trying to have video, but it's not, for whatever reason, it's not allowing, but that's fine.
We can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. So we wish to construct 2 third-floor dormers and a new covered open front porch. We currently own the commercial building that was constructed in 1904, which is the 53 Unquote Place. It's a non-conforming, it is non-conforming to setbacks and parking requirements. We were granted a variance by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and those approvals are attached for a reduction in the already non-conforming setbacks to the side and the street lines. We wish to reduce the commercial use and convert the 2nd and 3rd floors into 1 apartment, which will reduce the parking demand for the property by 5 spaces. So currently the basement and 1st floor, they have a total square footage of 2,448, which has always been used as commercial space. And the 2nd and 3rd floor currently total 1,714 square feet. That was also used as commercial space. So with the additions, which are 2 dormers, it will add an additional 720 square feet of living space to the 3rd floor, giving that a total of 2,252 square feet for the single apartment. Currently, the demand for the parking based on the square footage of commercial space is 12 spaces, but by converting 1,714 square feet of commercial space into residential, the parking demand goes from 7 spaces for commercial use to 2 spaces for residential use. We have spoken to all of the town agencies who reviewed our plans and have given their approvals with no modifications to the plans needed. So we are asking for your approval.
Any questions from the Commissioner Braun?
So the footprint is not changing, right? You got a variance on setbacks. Could you explain that? If the footprint is not
Correct. We're keeping the footprint. We're actually keeping the existing window placement as well. But we're looking to add those dormers on the 3rd floor because it virtually opens that space up for living, and gives some additional square footage without exceeding the original footprint of the building.
Would that be on the front or the back?
They're actually on the sides. So if you're facing the building, you'll see the dormers coming off either side of the roof line on the 3rd floor.
I see, yeah. And you would what is the use for the bottom 2 floors right now, or what type of use goes in there? Is it, I know there were law offices there at one point.
It was a conglomeration of several different businesses that were renting from the previous owner. It's currently vacant.
So the basement is also built out for renting to commercial, and that it's all vacant on the bottom 2 floors, but do you anticipate more commercial going in there?
Absolutely. We would have commercial on for the basement and 1st floor, and then residential on the 2nd and 3rd floor. And that's how it'll be built out.
And the parking, so you did not need a variance for the parking because reducing the parking requirements from what it is now by changing from commercial to residential.
Correct. We're actually, say that again, I'm sorry.
How many bedrooms will be in the new, it's basically a 1.5 story apartment because the top is, well, actually probably 2 full stories now that you're adding the dormers, you're expanding the attic area.
Correct. It's
How many bedrooms, bathrooms? Yeah, I can't.
3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? The applicant? Oh, Commissioner Francis.
Can you discuss the emergency exits?
Emergency exits. It will all be. Well, what do you mean exactly by an emergency exit?
Basement tenant, the 3rd floor tenant.
Yes, so you can see for the 3rd floor, there is an existing fire escape from the third floor. We're also building an internal staircase that can be accessed from the second floor residence and the second and third floor to the first floor, but there's also an exterior escape from the third floor. For the basement, there is a separate entrance for that goes, it's an exterior entrance on the back side. And then there is an entrance in the front that is accessed by the porch. And then we'll also be able to have the handicap parking and handicap access through the back of the building.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Nothing, I don't see any other questions at this point. Do you have anything further, Ms. Giacomazza?
No, thank you so much.
So I'll end the initial application portion of the hearing. Is there any member of the public in person that wishes to be heard on this matter? Seeing no, be heard, no, okay. Nobody in person wishes to be heard on the matter. Does anybody who's joining us remotely or by phone wish to be heard on this matter? 3 Uncle Place. Joining by phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Is anybody signed up in the chat, Miss Harrigan? Does anybody that's joining us remotely wish to be heard on this application? I'm not hearing anybody. Once, twice. Close the public comment portion of this application. Ms. Giacomazza, anything further?
Nope.
Thank you. I'll close the hearing on this item. Thank you. Last item is our FairTV zoning regulations update, this POCD update. Plenty of, but let's have a little talk. So Went.
Well, we appreciated the conversation we had at our last meeting, and we were hoping to revisit the issue. One of the kind of the unresolved issues was the discussion about prospective downtown amendments and how that might translate to potentially tax rate. So we have some slides to walk through that conversation. If you want to try to engage in that, I'm not sure how far we're going to get, but we can. But,
Let's, spend a little time on it. I mean, the concern that was expressed to staff was, obviously there's no consensus. Not there's no consensus, but nothing has been decided at this point. But in their minds, there were a lot of more certainty as to where the commission was with respect to this, and wanted to go dive into this a little bit deeper. So why don't you give the slides at least and see where we are at the end. And if it's that much later, we've done a lot today. At least we have gone through the slides. You can be sent out and then you're up.
Are these available, these slides?
Staff did them, so I suspect they'll send them out.
we could certainly.
I had a question. When will the consultant be able to come back? 'Cause I have a lot more questions for him.
We have a meeting with tomorrow to gauge his availability. We can, I've asked him about our next 2 meetings to see whether what his availability might be, but if you've got questions beyond what was discussed a couple of weeks ago, if you wanna give us the general topics of where you wanna go with, and we can to help us prepare for that, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think one of them was that he said that he met maybe with you and Emmeline, Ms. Harrigan, with several town department heads, and I just wanted to see those notes and memorandums on what he gleaned from those conversations. It would just be helpful just to see what their vision is for the P O C D. Are those available, you know?
We can make those available to you if you would like them, yes.
I have another, just, are we talking about housekeeping matters first, or?
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, if you have a question, go ahead.
I think there were a few different requests last time for added information or backup or data. We got something, I'm trying to remember what we got. I think we got Board of Ed slides, the 46-page thing. That's the only thing I've seen, I think. Maybe this is another one, but is there any other backup or detail in addition to what Commissioner Harrison said that we've asked for or could get? I know we each asked for random things at the meeting, the last meeting we had on September 26th.
What we presented or what we followed up with were all of the slides that were presented that evening. They're certainly based on the conversation that we had. There's some revision to the draft that's going to be necessary based on what we talked about. That has not yet been done. We talked about rearranging the how the plan is introduced originally, maybe giving a high level summary. We clearly want to revise any kind of narrative and eliminate the this east versus west referencing that was problematic. We agreed that we were going to make reference to the characteristics of the planning areas that are in the current POCD, which was a concern, and make a clearer articulation that the recommendations in the strategies are just that, they're regulations, that there was some concern that there was the interpretation that these things were mandates or prescribed changes, so we need to soften up some of that language. We haven't done that yet because we want to see what other areas of concern the commission might have before we redraft the draft, so to speak. But if there are any other, there were some general things about making reference to source data if it's quoted in the drawing or in the plan itself. I didn't take that to mean you were looking for that now, but just more, clearer.
My only other recollection was that there was a request that he provide notes of the town meetings and such and input from the community. And he responded that it was meant and promised to be kept confidential. I don't remember anything other than that and the Board of Ed stuff and what Ms. Commissioner Harrison just requested. So if there is something that's been missed, please reach out to Mr. Wentz. And to highlight, to piggyback off what he said, if there are any, we all said rightfully, there were other comments that we have as we continue looking at this. If there's any other questions or comments either have not been addressed yet or have arisen since, please send them into the staff so we can again do what we did last time with making sure that our conversation with the consultant is targeted and emphasizes what we want. Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, I just wanted to no, and I appreciate that. And I think this question is maybe directed to you. But is there any idea that maybe we could form a subcommittee that is in our statute that we could do? And since this isn't really due for another, 2 to 3 years, we have the time. There are things that I think we should potentially want to study, like school enrollment with, in respect to redistricting, densifying the east side of the town. It can be composed of seniors, PTA leaders, a variety of different stakeholders, just to really make it our own. Versus I just feel like we have, the staff has meetings with the consultant, which is fine, but we're not really privy to these conversations. And if I'm gonna put my name on a document that's gonna, define our vision for the next 10 years, I don't like more visibility to the process.
I think we've hashed out the history of where this came from and how this developed for the last 3 years with town involvement and such. So I don't really feel the need to kind of rehash all that. I'm not sure I agree with your characterization that the staff and the consultant are doing this without the town's input.
No, I'm not suggesting that, sir. I'm really not. And I don't, because I know there's been public workshops, but.
That's fine. So I mean, having said that, again, their staff, they're taking our recommendations and working with this. They make the most obvious point person to be working with a consultant, with their detailed knowledge of process and everything else that they know more about zoning at this point, than we do and may know. With all the recommendations in the past 3 years and again, all that history, I think them working on this, as they've said, with our involvement with the consultant, and hopefully the next meeting, the meeting after, will be sufficient. As to a subcommittee, I mean, certainly not now or an election, because I don't know who's gonna be on or what would happen afterwards, but if we feel the need to do that after the election, we can have that discussion then.
I just take issue with you suggesting I was saying that without the input of our commission. I wasn't suggesting that.
Okay,
There's a lot
I
of-
heard that, but I mean, to be honest, I heard that.
Okay, well, that wasn't the intended statement.
Thank you for the clarification. Commissioner Braun.
So I understand what we're doing now. We've started going through it and we had some questions about a few topics and we're gonna go into that. Are we going to go through the rest of all the comments at some point, like in order, or is there an order of going through all the comments we gotten from all the commission members? So we cover everything? Are we gonna have, would that be next time? Because we started the discussion.
Right. Clearly, let me just back up a minute. We clearly need more public input, and this will be held out for a public hearing to have public input on the draft as it's been presented or will be revised. But before we do, as we stated before we do that, we need to get a comfort level amongst the commission itself as to what the issues are, where we might need to make revisions before we even take that next step. So to answer your question, yes, that's entirely up to you, or how long we need to continue that dialogue until we're at a point where we can make revisions based on the feedback that we get from this commission, be able to have a revised draft to go forward. So I think the answer to that question is yes, but we tried, again, we can do that as staff. If we're gonna bring in Adam again, I think we need to make the best use of his time. We need to probably create a hierarchy of which topics you want to delve into. If we are going to have a general going down the row of everybody's comments, we can certainly do that, but I don't think we need the consultant present for that discussion. And if those conversations get us to a point where we might need to dive a little deeper on a particular topic, then that creates that hierarchy for us.
Okay, great. So long as we get a chance to go through all these comments, there's a lot of them there.
Yeah, I encourage the commission again, if new comments, give them, as we've kind of given them in the past. If there's a topic that you want to readdress or don't believe was addressed fully or was missed because we had other, we just got out of time. We have them, I know, but anything you can do to help, spoon feed, I guess, so to speak, where you wanna go, that's only gonna help us.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. What would benefit us is what we tried to do last time is there were some common elements amongst the comments that we've received that led us to those topics being at the top of the list. There are others that are more, maybe one commissioner had, or maybe two, but there's divergence in some of the comments. For example, that's why we wanted to talk about downtown, because of the written comments we have so far. We didn't really talk about it at length, and some of the commissioners weren't here. But I know just from the comments we received that there's varying opinions of what the appropriate next steps might be in considering what downtown strategies might be, and particularly what's the best fit for exit.
One last housekeeping question. I started redlining the document in the beginning, the beginning intro portion. Can I submit that for people to look at and see if they like it? Because I have a lot of suggested changes to a lot of the narrative. And I don't know what to do with it. I can't email the whole narrative, but I could potentially email the pages I redline and segregate them from the Word document, because the Word document is like 72 meg or something. So, but I downloaded the Word document, I started redlining it. So I could potentially take my red lines and just email them in as a comment. I suppose maybe that's a way to do it, to see if anyone likes it, like I wanna put the statutory authority in the front of the document, I think I mentioned that.
We heard that from last time, that there was, people liked the introductory statement that was in the current plan and put that. That was part of what I'm referencing when I said reorganize the introduction. I don't know that I would go redlining just yet. I think we need to have more
Okay.
conversation on where that takes us and let us
Okay, thank you, I don't wanna take up.
to redo the draft, and then you can do it, because then we're gonna get too many versions of document out there.
Yeah,
So
that's a
I
problem.
just think we need to have more, you need to have more conversation amongst yourselves to see what the topics that we need to take a deeper dive into, and if you can provide that feedback in advance to help point us to where we need to be talking about, that would be beneficial. But again, from my takeaway from the comments that we've received thus far is there's diverging opinions on what the recommendation ought to be, and we need to have conversation about that to see if we can coalesce around certain strategies or go forward. So
Thank
that's.
Ready?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, can you guys hear me from here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we just wanted to provide a few slides about Exide, just to kind of delve a little deeper into that policy discussion. For Exide, it's currently zoned industrial, as was discussed at the last meeting. There has been discussion about rezoning this parcel, changing what's allowed. Should it be mixed use? What kind of mixed use? What we've heard from the public generally is they really appreciate the center design district, its walkability, its pedestrian orientation. And so in looking at going back a little bit in history, should we make a special zone for this parcel? Should we do this? Should we do that? What we kind of talked about based on the public really engaging with the center design district was pulling that district westward to include Exide, so that a lot of those design features that are part of that district could be included as part of that zone. This isn't working, let's see. Oh, there we go.
So joining remotely, this is Miss Emmeline Harrigan speaking, because I just saw the comments.
Thank you, sorry. So just comparing the center design and the design commercial district, the center design district presently allows 5 stories, 50 feet, whereas the DCD allows 4 stories, 40 feet. The neighborhood design district is even more modest in scale. Those are our village districts. So the CDD has always been intended to have a little bit more lot coverage, because these are parcels that are have buildings that are closer to the street. It encompasses our historic buildings within town that frankly don't even meet some of our zoning regulations today, but are beloved fabric of the downtown. You know, these buildings that people can enter right off the sidewalk, that are very close by, where you can put outdoor dining in front of them. So in order to recapture some of that feel that I think most people identify with downtown Fairfield and extend that westward, that was part of the goal, based on what we heard at the meetings, and then trying to make sense of the regulatory structure to really encourage more of that moving westward to the Mill River. So again, you know, CDD is much more pedestrian oriented. It's got a front street line setback of only 10 feet as opposed to the design commercial district, which is 25 feet. And that's the district, for example, closer to Post Road Circle, where we've got larger parking lots in front of the building. Keep in mind that this is a minimum setback requirement. So most of those buildings that you'll see, such as the Marshalls, the CVS, those have entire parking lots in front of them, because that's what our regulatory structure kind of permits now. So as I get to the additional slides, we're going to talk about some of the things that we've discussed in pulling CDD westward to include Exide, but then also updating our zoning regulations when we get to that phase to make sure that we don't end up with parking lots in front, that we end up with streets that interact with the sidewalk, that provide those walkable communities that in all of our public meetings, we've heard from the public that they want more of. So that's what we're trying to really accomplish with the policy recommendation.
I have a question about Exide, if you don't mind. So if we rezoned it from industrial to mixed use, that would be subject to 830G?
If you eliminate the industrial piece, there's an exemption in the statute that industrial zones that don't permit residential are exempt from the 8-30G appeal process.
I mean, the hope is that we provide a regulatory structure that would entice a developer to do a development for something that's probably gonna be less than 30% deed restricted affordable, but is within a realm that provides, a reasonable return on investment for them to pursue our regulations, which provides surety, hopefully not an appeal, and they could move forward with understanding what their development could be. When you talk to any developer, they would rather have known regulation than the possibility of an appeal and having to go to court.
The other I'm sorry, was there Commissioner Braun, go ahead.
CDD, I don't recognize that, is that we have DCD, which is Design Commercial District, then we have CB, Center Design Business, CDB.
Oh, sorry.
Wait.
The purpose of this slide,
CDD.
CDD is Center Design District, it's just, we just
We're
shortened.
shortening what we
just shortened it up.
Okay, thanks. We're not creating a new one. Okay.
No. So we're just trying to pull what we have in the center right now further west. And part of that is because DCD is an auto-oriented zone. We want more of the pedestrian-oriented requirements to be pulled westward to the Mill River. We've got, if I can go back to that, if you just will bear with me. When you look at the parcel sizes that are west of the pink zoned area, which is the CDD, they're very modestly sized parcels, so they actually fit better with the regulatory structure of the CDD zone as well. So I'm going to go back to what it permits and what it doesn't permit. So for example, in the architectural standards for the Center Design District, parking is required behind the building. Drive-throughs are prohibited. There are site lighting standards. We require courtyards and open space if there are spaces that are not being utilized for building or parking on the site. We have also design requirements within those standards already that require screening for service functions, for utilities, that request bench seating near the building where there's space to do that. It also speaks to the building considerations such as your facade scale, the mass, the placement of the facade relative to the street entrances, architectural finishes. So that's presently not at all within the design commercial districts. It's all rests within the Center Design District. So again, we've heard from Fairfielders time and time again at the multiple public meetings that we've had that they really love the architectural design of downtown. Some of which, again, our regulations don't support right now. So we're trying to get back to making sure that more of what's built in Fairfield follows the center design model instead of the design commercial district model. And with that, we are looking at those proposed CDD zoning revisions. So we're talking about that larger ground floor, and I'm using this example of Bedford Square and Westport, for example, which is that 4-story model where it's got that 15-foot first floor and then it's got 3 stories above it. But if you can see to the very left, that 4th floor is actually set back further. So there's that upper level balcony that sits above the 3rd floor. And then that 4th floor is fairly hidden from sight because it's set back an additional amount. So these are some of the things that our current Center Design District do not include, but we'd like to move towards. It also increases the affordability percentage to 12% at that 80% AMI, as we've discussed on some of our projects, that again would hopefully entice developers to use our design standards because they get to use that lower affordability percentage, but then that means that they're constructing buildings that we want to see in our extension to the downtown, moving further west. Or if buildings get reconstructed within that zone, that they're gonna follow those design criteria that the commission hopefully would wanna see and that reflect, some of the new buildings that we're seeing that can meet those requirements to help minimize the massing of a straight 4-story structure.
And these are the recommendations to the 2019 TOD study, right?
Yes, they are. The other thing that we're looking at too is some of the zero setback. And so that would allow, again, just this tighter street edge parking from only one side, so you don't have these massive driveways where you've got these through parcels. This was some of what was discussed for the Uncle Road development. We can continue to discuss some of these standards that we've talked about before, but we do recognize that presently the CDD, although it encompasses, I think, some of the uses that we'd prefer to see, there are still some design changes that need to be made that hopefully will reflect better some of the projects that we'd like to see moving forward. And again, this speaks to that 4th story. I know that we've had a lot of concern about, well, could we only do 3 stories? What we've heard from the development community and from our Economic Development Commission is 4 stories really makes sense. But minimizing the visual impact of that 4th story, I think the commission and other members of the public have indicated is very important. So we have to kind of talk through what those options might be in order to do that, whether it's an additional 10-foot setback at that 4th floor, whether it's more facade variation. There are a lot of different options, good best practices that have been implemented in other communities. So that's a further discussion to have, but know that we have that, you, the commission, have the opportunity to have that discussion. Our parking in downtown also probably needs to be revised in the center design district to reflect more specifically some of the parking standards that we've talked through for our transit-oriented development districts.
I'm sorry, if you just
Yep,
go back the last standard there, the lesser of 1 space per bedroom or 1.5 spaces per unit is the parking standard that was adopted in the downtown TOD overlay that rated the Anchorage project on Uncle Road. That's where that number comes from.
You have many more slides?
I just have one.
Thank you.
So the other thing that came up, I think, with the pre-application presentation was whether or not within the CDD zoning revisions, whether you think that there might also be regulatory changes that might be specific to Exide, but also might be appropriate to other sites. For example, storage permitted only next to Metro North Railroad, right? That was one of the pre-application development proposals. I think we heard from the commission at that meeting that some of you were not too keen on the storage being street front on the post road. So maybe that's something that you work through as you look at your CDD zoning regulatory revisions. But I think probably what you have to agree on is, do you want Exide to be mixed use that would be permitted within the CDD in pulling that district westward? So I think those are some of the policy questions that you think you guys have to ask each other as a commission. But again, from what we've heard from the general public, some of the discussion with this commission, these are all things that I think hopefully you can feel comfortable with, because again, we've heard that we want more walkability in Fairfield, and this is really a better way to achieve it by pulling the center design district west, as opposed to the current zoning that again allows drive-throughs and doesn't enhance with architectural standards. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Harrigan. All right. The slides will get sent out and we'll pass our curfew a bit. So why don't we let it be there? Don't dive into it. It should be a silly long thorough discussion. But so thank you, Ms. Harrigan, Mr. White, for those. That'll give a good bounce springboard into the next time so we can have this discussion. Ms. Harrigan, Commissioner Harrison, sorry.
What time will we, because how, going into, starting this at like the last half hour meeting is a bit much after a long meeting. Can we perhaps think about doing this? I know that we have other business to handle, like I just think about the timing a bit more if we can.
No, that's a good question. It's not an exact science when you set up an agenda with the hopes that you're gonna have a significant time block. While it was a really, I thought, compelling hearing with respect to the pickleball courts, we didn't anticipate that was gonna take as long as it did, but that's fine. That's that's the nature of it. But to answer your question, I don't anticipate at the next meeting, we're gonna have a public hearing scheduled, so we will have the opportunity to have a lengthier dialogue amongst yourselves. I think more primarily is you need to start working out, where there's agreement, where there's divergence and how we might find a path forward rather than, listening to us all the time. We wanna, engage you in that conversation. But
I think you'll send out hopefully a kind of like a roadmap like you did last time of kind of topics that we need to address.
yeah, we'll go back and look at that.
Comments should be-
Follow up to this walkthrough, I think to lead the conversation and however long that may take to see where everybody's.
And again, we should be submitting more things to them, either reminders or new things or whatever. Commissioner Crisilla.
Given how these meetings typically go, is it worth considering having a special meeting at some point to just dedicate solely to having discussion of this?
I think the answer is yes, at some point. I'm not sure at this point, considering where we are, if it needs to be done before the election. So I think we need to keep moving forward. But adding something before the election, I'm not, if I knew like one or two special hearings would be what we need to push us over the top, I'd say go for it. That's not gonna be the case here. I would think, yes, that's in the cards, but I'm not sure if it's in the short-term cards.
Yeah, so I mean, if you've got, we'll go back and reread all of the input that we've got thus far and try to get a more, so kind of a topical list in it. And if we can get that to you ahead of time for your own consideration and collecting your thoughts going forward, we'll try to do that. But I don't anticipate, like I said, I think it behooves us to have more conversation and see what rises to needing a more of a deeper dive before we re-engage Adam in particular. So we're gonna it's gonna be an iterative process, as long as it takes to get you guys comfortable with something before we go back, release it out to the public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Close the hearing.